Hello, everybody. If it's Wednesday, it's Warhammer, and that must mean it's time for another episode of Warhammer Weekly. Joining me, as always, is my co-host Tom. What's up, brother? How you doing?
Hello, friends.
Also joining us this week, back on the show, it is Paul of the Mortal Realms, of the Bit of the Day quiz on Twitter, of many things, of Tom forgetting to mute the show that he had on.
Fine. It's
And
fine.
how you doing, Paul? Welcome back, brother.
I am doing great. I am super thankful that Party at the All Points didn't break the cast last week, and it wasn't the final one. I'm glad that the hosers and the buds didn't overload your sound ears. So
Yes.
doing great.
I took a note from last week. I have gotten a new microphone. Not that the old one I had was bad. It was actually a nice microphone, but apparently it wasn't nice enough. I got a new one. I played with the sound. I tried a bunch of different settings and recorded myself this week. And then tried to pick something that sounded good. And now I'm being told I'm too quiet. Isn't this always the way, gentlemen? It's
Always.
the way.
one way or another. That's fine.
Yeah.
A little too quiet is better than a little too loud, but I will mess with it either way. Let's try right there and see how that works. Okay, so this week we're talking Path to Glory, and I am very excited about it. Because I'm going to be completely honest with you. I mentioned this before the show, so these two already know it. I hadn't read the Path to Glory rules before getting ready for this show. And
If I could have done one thing in my life, it's that I made Vince read the Path to Glory rules.
tell me if this is better, folks. Right now, I turned the voice up, so hopefully this is better.
I mean, you sound great to me, Vince.
Sure, I appreciate that. I was very concerned about it spiking, so there we go. Which it's not doing anymore. And I have to say, I'm very excited to get into this, Paul. I'm stoked about this, and honestly was considering when I'm going to start my own campaign. Not a joke or something I would say for the show. I really mean that. There you
Awesome.
go. But anyways, we begin with some news. Hey, welcome back, Tom. Glad you're here for this.
Hey,
The only segment of the show you're responsible for.
What can I say? Maybe ghost pirates?
I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah, look at the rumor engine. I
so
love it.
I was on our Discord, the Mortal Realms Discord, which Aaron will kill me if I don't shout out. And Tim King Tristan was saying that he was super bummed that he didn't say this is Radikar's pirate ghost ship last week. So I'm okay with that. That sounds like a cool idea.
I mean, I'm in.
Like, look, it's definitely ghost pirates. We all agree. We all know it's true. Ghost pirates confirmed. I don't think there's any need to discuss this further. Like,
Well,
Right.
but
it's what it is.
here's a question I have. Is it Luther Harkon, though? Because on the map of Olgu that we just had, Harkon was mentioned on that map. So it might actually be a new undead army or some new Mortark, perhaps. Because I believe in the end times he might have been a Mortark. And he was definitely a pirate.
He was a Mortark, yes, that is true.
He was a Mortark. He was a pirate. They kind of missed the book, though.
Yeah.
Like, we were all
True.
we had that call for him to show up and be present in
Right.
Soulblight Gravelords, but no. So I'm just gonna say it's Ghost Pirates. Where this is our Soulblight Gravelords Part 2. Like, we were right, but not within that one book. This is basically gonna be like Lumineth, right? We're gonna get Part 2
Oh, I hope that's not true.
next
Dear
year,
Lord.
and it'll be
Underwater
Ghost Pirates.
Boogaloo.
Yeah, there you go. Like, this Harrow Deep sets up the Ghost Pirate attack out of Ulgu. There we are.
Mhm.
I think it's all clear. That's what's happening.
I
Uh,
agree. I think that's a good
as long as I get undead pirates, I'm down. Like, that's all I want. Like, please, GW.
Now, whether or not it has
just
anything
wanna-
to do with Luther Harkon, I don't know, and I don't care. It's not a character of great emotional attachment, but like Ghost Pirates or Ghost, yeah, I would be all about that. I'm fine. That's fine.
Tom just wants pirates. Like, he just wants pirates.
Yeah.
You're right, actually. Like, at this point, just give me pirates. I can paint them, like, dead or ghostly. Like, I can do that work. Just give me pirates. Let's start there.
Yeah, like there's so many ways we could go with this. Let's just make it happen. At this point, we've accepted it. This is what's happening. Next up. But speaking of undead, that leads us to our next news item, which
No
is
dragon.
Well, that's not it. Sorry. There we go. Yes, no dragons yet again. Another week of no dragons. So
Womp womp womp. Like, let's stop. We'll go to the Harrowdeep thing in a minute, but like, let's talk about the no dragons thing.
sure.
What happened?
There's clearly a production issue.
Yep, agreed.
Period. That's
I
it.
think I think that they saw how amazing they were in the rules, and they're like, wait, we must make more.
It would be like one would hope that they made the right choice and said, hold on, we better not put these out there, or Stormcast are going to get so broken that that nobody will be happy. Look, as I said, at this point we've held them long enough. Just keep holding them, and when the winter FAQ comes out, put their points up, and then release them. Easy. See? Easy. Then nobody get angry. Like, oh, I bought 50 million of them and now they're worse. And it's like, nope, that can't happen. That doesn't happen. Just nerf them and release them at the same time. That's the correct answer. Put their points to where they should be. We all win. There you go. Easy. So who cares? It's fine. I got my 1,000 points. So that I'm ready.
We know they're coming.
Yeah, they'll come.
Winter dragons are coming.
Could this be a new Dreadfleet?
What? Oh, what do you mean?
That what we're seeing echoes of is new Dreadfleet.
You asking? Are you back on Ghost Pirates?
Yeah, I'm back.
We've moved past that. Yeah, maybe.
No,
I don't care.
There was a dragon.
Sorry, I'm reading the comments, and they're like, "Tom, have you heard about Caradron Overlords?" Yes, I have. Give me more pirates. Sorry.
Yeah.
I'm back on pirates.
There was a dragon in Dreadfleet. It was a flying dragon that looks
Right.
relatively similar to the Stormcast dragon, a hero. The thing is, I think based on listening to last week and Vince talking about the metal paint and describing the size of the bit, that the bit would have to be way too large to be a Dreadfleet size thing.
Yeah.
And I think that all of the pieces that we've seen right now are way too large, unless they're gonna do like actual table size ships, right?
Sure.
Like
Scale it way
Archaon-based
up, yeah.
size ships.
Yeah.
Which would be amazing. I mean, they made those back in like 5th and 6th
literally
edition.
tens of them. It would be an incredible business move. All right, look, can we talk about this lady already? Can we talk about the thing we want to talk
fine.
about?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep.
All right.
Yep.
Okay, so Warhammer Day is October
Let's
30th.
talk about the undead pirate vampire that we're about to talk about.
Sure, it's fine. She's incredible. This is one of my favorite models they've made in a while. This is great.
Mhm.
We need more like this. She's wonderful.
Mhm.
Or they're
You know what
wonderful. I don't know. I'm not sure. Whatever.
Yeah.
She's great. They're
Mhm.
great. Whatever.
I only disagree with you, Tom, in the fact that it's a great Hark Huron pirate, not an undead pirate. But that's just me.
No, like it's so funny. When I saw her, you know what the first thing I thought was?
What?
Other than pirate, was she's begging for a head swap
Mhm.
for the Black Ark Fleetmaster.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Sure.
Like that's an easy, super
Like, that's
nice
a-
swap.
That's an easy, super nice swap. So you'll get the whole like eye patch, the long flowy hair. You already have the cutlass. Vampire pirate done. Done.
I mean, if I hadn't already done that conversion 3 times in my Hark Huron army, I'd be all over that.
Yeah, sure. She may also be like, I wonder if the new vampire lord on foot, like bat hair lady.
Yep.
Mhm.
the
I
terrible
wonder if
model.
that bat hair wouldn't fit over like through one of the loops. You understand what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Like she has a swoopy loopy collar
Yep.
piece. I wonder if you couldn't get the hair
Yeah.
to flow through one of the loops. You know, you cut the bats off, and like there you go. That could actually be a good use for that face and that that model, right? Because I don't like the base model. I don't think it has enough.
Yeah,
enough
I agree.
character.
This
to
has character though. This has character though.
100%. 100%.
Now,
So-
are we able to get this any other way but going to Warhammer Fest?
Yeah. They said this will be available. Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, it will be okay. Okay, good.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
Martin Orlando has said repeatedly that this is a punk model. How do you feel about that take?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. I mean, she's like a goth punk, but sure. Like, yeah. Okay.
Because she's bald.
It's
I think
a
it's also like the
combination of
amount of
factors.
chains and
Yeah.
like there's a lot of metal on her.
Knee-high boots.
Yep.
Yeah. Like I said, she feels very goth punk, but I'm down with it. And yes,
Yeah.
like because Warhammer Day is online, there's going to be a preview show on that Saturday for
Right.
various and sundry things. That's also when this model will become available. This and the very boring Primaris Lieutenant that like everybody, even the 40k players, were sad about because it was so boring.
Well, I'm gonna buy this one.
Sure.
Yeah.
Like I don't have a vampire army. I'm going to buy this one.
You say that about every army, and yet you have like 17 boxes in the background that suddenly get sold on eBay for all kinds of money at a moment's notice when you want to buy a new army. I'm just saying.
I mean, you're not wrong.
It's investment. Yeah, indeed.
Yes. For Tom, absolutely.
It's Tom's investment strategy. Yeah, exactly. All right.
It is.
What else have we got in the news? Anything else?
Yes, I just had it open and it's gone now, because of reasons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Oh, here it is. Harrow Deep. Harrow Deep.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about Harrow Deep.
Okay. Harrow Deep comes out. It is the worst combination I have ever seen of art and the miniature that art is meant to be.
Yes.
In the Stormcast leader, where the art around her is fantastic and gorgeous and amazing, and the model is underwhelming to say the least. Maybe don't put the hood up. Just gonna throw that out there. Kind of makes it look bad. So there we go.
I have an off-the-wall question for you. Which of these two Underworld warbands is actually going to be useful in the game in their respective army?
Pass.
It's possible.
Pass.
I mean, yeah. I think the Stormcast could be useful.
It's
the Neitherwing has got to have some decent movement. It's going to be a hero.
Sure.
With some protection because she's got two other models around her.
If I was going to guess, I would guess that the Cruel Boys one would stand a better chance because several of the Destruction Underworld's warbands end up being accidentally valuable. Like, I would argue that both of the Ironjawz ones are actually quite useful.
I
are a good
agree.
play to fill out points. The Ardboy one especially being quite good, as a matter of fact. Because the Ardboy one you can get cheaper than a set of 5 Ardboys, and it comes with 4 models that are actually better than a normal 5 set of Ardboys because they have a better ward save and many other benefits, and they're not battle line.
And they're great models to paint. Like
they're really good models, and they're not battle line.
Yeah.
So
which
you
is
can
great
use them as basically the same screen.
Kind of
yes, but they trade better. Right. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I really like them, and they're cheaper, by the way, than 5 Ardboys. So I've used them several times and like them. They're a great addition to a list. So, anyways, the Destruction ones, if anything, is going to be the one that has a chance. That's my argument, because Destruction things are all generally so underwhelming. They oftentimes the things can sneak
like loops
in.
back around.
Well, it's just like, well, the rest of this stuff isn't very good either. So these guys are fine.
Well, I'm going to make a prediction. None of them are going to make it into any of my armies.
Sure.
Wow.
The Autumn Lotus said, if the leaders of the Underworld teams didn't require the unit to be taken, how useful would those heroes be? It would still vary a lot, because it'd be a question of, like, what do the points actually come to for those heroes standalone then, and how does all that work? You know, some of them are like, tangentially useful because their unit's bodyguard for them, and so provide them with a quasi-ward save, which can be useful in a couple cases.
Quick quiz. Out of all of the Underworld's warbands, which one do you think is the most useful in the game?
Grashrak.
Really?
Yeah. The Beast guy. He fits into almost anything. He can be allied into a lot of different things, and he has a built-in spell that can give +1 to hit.
What about Hrothgorn, though? Hrothgorn is a good call for an ogre army.
He's okay. He's not bad. Yeah. He's okay. He doesn't have as much versatility though. The trick with the beast guy is that he can fit into a lot of other armies besides beasts.
I'm gonna go out on a limb and say I actually think the KO one is the best.
Wow,
that nice is one.
Very. You are on a thin limb.
Yep.
No, I don't think so because it gives you rerolls to hit, which nothing else in the army can as a usable buff.
I understand.
So it's actually a buff that nothing else can give.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And you can split the dudes up and put like the 4 guys in a gun hauler with another hero if you wanted to.
Because they're both Skyfarers and Marines.
Are they still restricted though to their skyport? So you have to take their skyport in order to have them?
You don't have to take their skyport. They just don't benefit from the rest of the skyport rules.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, which is not that big of a deal because that's not why you're taking them. Like that's not what's going on there.
Sure.
And you can still buff anybody with the reroll ones to hit.
Yeah, so. I don't disagree. They're not. I don't disagree that they're good. I disagree that they're the best. That's what I'm saying is the call you're making. Like that's the bold call you've gone there. If you had just said who's good, I would have included them. 100%.
No. I'm gonna go on a limb. They're the best.
Sure. Yeah, AoS coach says used to be Morgwaith. Sure, when she was 80 points for no reason. Yeah, she was pretty great. One of the most undercosted units in the history of this game. Obviously wrong from the rip. Okay, anyways. What else we got? Any other news?
I think it's our news. Yeah.
Yeah, it's quiet news week. All right. So, let's get on to some pick of the week. Paul, you're the guest. What are you spruiking there, buddy?
So we are starting a new podcast. Me and Sever, otherwise known as Will, are starting a podcast called Path to Story on the Mortal Realms Podcast Network. So we have released episode 0. You can find it at our website, mortalrealms.com, or through our Discord, mortalrealms.com/Discord. We will, I believe, be dropping episode 1, which is more hour length, next Saturday. Don't quote me, but I think that's the plan. And then we're going to try and do monthly releases from then on. It's going to be Path to Glory, and it's also going to be highly narrative focused. And I say that differently because we're going to be playing Path to Glory rules in order to give us narrative hooks with which to make the story to define our armies. So that's the idea.
Very nice. And Will is in the chat. He said, "That's me. I'm Will." There you go.
Yeah. Hi, Will.
Fantastic. Linked down below so you guys can go sign up to the feed. Tom, what is your pick of the week?
As some of you know, I moonlight in the Magic community, which means that I do some Magic content consumption. And one of the content creators that I follow over there, Pleasant Kenobi, has been getting into Warhammer more and more. And Pleasant Kenobi he's been doing 40K, and he released a wonderful video titled WTF is up with 40K, the 40K tournaments. And he's coming at it from like a highly competitive Magic perspective. Okay. And I always love listening to folks reflect on our community and coming into our competitive environments from other similar like tangential communities. Okay. And so he has a wonderful like 15-16 minute video reflecting on it. And it's like, to be clear, the problems of the 40K competitive community aren't those of AoS. But it's fascinating to even hear him reflect on the like things that they are doing in the 40K that just aren't even an issue over here for us.
Sure.
And so it's interesting. Like, I think we get siloed too much in our critiques of AoS without actually realizing like how bad it is in other areas and what we're doing right. Mm-hmm. And so like it's a wonderfully engaging. Pleasant Kenobi is wonderful to listen to. So I'm going to encourage you all to go check out his video. Like I said, 15-16 minutes. And it's a enjoyable listen of a Brit railing on 40K events. So
nice. It's the game's in a worse state by far.
It is. It's not AoS.
Yeah, correct. But that's fine. I'll get popped up in my feed. I did not click it, but it sounds interesting. I agree with you. I do like outside perspectives on that stuff. Okay. For myself, mine is for Cult of Paint. So Andy and Henry and the gang there had a great episode that released yesterday, day before, I don't remember, very recently, about painting minis for competition and prepping those models up and getting ready for competitions and competition painting sort of in general, which is something I get a lot of questions about over time, and something I'm obviously keenly interested in. And I thought, obviously, these guys have a wealth of knowledge. Andy has won quite a few Golden Demons for obvious reason, because he's an amazing artist and painter. All of them have participated and or won Golden Demon before. So it's great to hear their thoughts on what makes for competitions. It is a little more Golden Demon sort of focused. Not that that's every painting competition. There are great differences, but check it out. They talk about it in general. It's just their perspective is one where they've obviously been informed a lot by Golden Demon, but they also talk other broad concepts as well. Okay.
So, sorry, I apologize. Speaking of outside perspectives of our hobby,
yeah,
I neglected to mention, because I did not write it down, that there was a third member of our podcast who is also going to be a major player going forward and starting off, and that is Miss Photon on Discord, otherwise known as Spencer. And she has played a couple games of Warcry, but has never played Age of Sigmar. And she is going to be an integral part of the podcast, specifically because she doesn't know all the background of Age of Sigmar. And Will and I tend to get super involved in the narrative and just go on for forever. And also to call us out and to say, I don't understand what you're talking about. Please stop and explain what's going on, because it doesn't make any sense.
That's fantastic.
Which I actually was like, when Will was like, I have a friend who's like tangentially interested, but doesn't know anything about Warhammer. And I'm like, that sounds perfect, because I will just ramble on for forever about nonsense that doesn't make sense. So please, can we ask her to be a part of our podcast, specifically to come in and to be the person who tells us to shut up so we make better content, please?
Nice. I like it.
Or just ask you to explain things so that you're more like new user friendly to the environment.
Exactly. So if you're not heavily lore focused, it shouldn't be too big of an issue for you to enter into this podcast, because starting from episode 0, Spencer is there to help us to realize when we are getting too deep, too involved, too narcissistic with our stories. So, yeah.
Nice. All right. Well, that sounds fantastic. Everything's linked down in the description. Let's move on to some hobby time. All right. So, hobby time. I have photos. I will go to said photos now. But as I'm bringing up said photos, hey, if you're watching right now, why not hit that like button, or maybe subscribe if you haven't already. We really appreciate it. It helps other people find the show, both now as you're watching live, and it helps other people find the show afterward. It's great. It's simple. It's free. Click buttons. Clicking buttons is fun. Okay. So, Tom, here's your stuff. I have the pictures you sent me up. Take us through what we're looking at here. This Sentinel.
So I'm painting, and this is my test model.
Yeah.
So I'm so much so that I literally dipped my Winsor Newton 7 into my candle wax next to me, thinking that it was my my paint cup. So that was sad. But I think I saved the brush, so we'll see. But yeah. So anyways,
you use the trick that I told you about?
No, I had already immediately went to my water and then immediately like scraped it all off. And
wait, so you have a trick for dipping a paintbrush in wax?
Sure.
Or just for cleaning up paintbrush in general?
Removing things like this. It's not like as though I've dipped in candle wax. Don't do what Tom did. Do not immediately submerge it in water, because, see, that's dumb, because your water is cold and it will immediately solidify the wax.
It worked for me.
Sure.
It's what I'm painting with right now.
I'm sure. So at any rate, that's fine. No, very cool model, Tom. I like the head swap over to the Waywatcher head there. So very nice.
Oh no, those are just the Eternal
Sisters of the
Eternal
Thorn.
Guard.
Or
Eternal
no,
Eternal
the
Guard, yeah.
Eternal Guard heads.
That's what I meant.
So
Yeah.
I stole it from
I like
Martin.
your color scheme too.
Martin did a similar head swap, and I really liked it. So I'm like, yep, doing that. And
Just-
so thanks, Martin.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm doing like a sunrise dawn theme for my Sentinels.
Very nice. All right. Next up here, I switched right over to it, but there we go. All right, hobby time. Paul, I have your picture up you sent me of a rough-looking gentleman with a crossbow situation.
All right. So this is actually my leader for my Har-Kiran army. And this is one of the things that I really want to talk about when we're doing Path to Glory, because the reason why I love him so much is because I've made a narrative about him, and then I've created an Anvil of Apotheosis profile for him, because in my army he is at the moment in the Har-Kiran history where it's still Anvil Guard, and they've poisoned all the Stormcast, and they haven't ascended back into Azir because they are all taken hostage, and he has taken some of their equipment. So he actually has a Stormcast bolt bow thing, and I'm blanking on the name right now. And he is the center of my narrative for this Har-Kiran army. He's my commander. So it's one of those things where it just was perfect for me to be able to create a character with which to tell a story about.
Nice.
So
awesome. I love it. Fantastic. And we're going to look at said army here later on when we talk about Path to Glory. We'll look at actually your roster so we can see an example of all of this in action. For myself, it has been a very big hobby week. A lot going on. I am on my second to last model for my army, which is a second Fulminator, and he is taking forever because the Fulminators take forever. I would love to have 8 of these guys someday, but with this paint scheme, 4 is going to be where we stop if I want to retain. It's either 8 of these or it's like my sanity or 8 of these. That's the choice, and I'm going to go ahead and stay not mad. But I'm almost done with the red, and then I'll move on to the hours and hours of non-metallic metal steel all over this guy. And
are you taking 4 to Havoc?
No, this is the second one. This is number 2. This is me getting number 2 ready. I have this to finish, and then 1 more fig after this. So that's it. So we're moving along.
So last week you talked about a cool special one that had kind of a bigger base. Have you worked on that one yet, or no?
That's the one I'm saving for last. I also can't share that one at all because of reasons you'll eventually see in time.
Sounds good.
And then I'm also at the same time getting all the base for our display board put together. That's this madness on the desk behind me. That's as you can see, the ultimate use for end times books is to weigh down glued together MDF. These things are endlessly useful to me. I could have never built a display board if it weren't for those end times books, because they're so heavy, but yet they stay together because of the slip cover, right? So I can put them in any position I want. Like sometimes I need to stand them up vertical. You know what I mean? Like
so helpful.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to do a power move and include them as part of the display board and just paint over the books themselves.
That's what I think of you. But no, so I'm getting all the stuff together, ready, glued down for the base of the board. I have to have it ready to go by this weekend because Tom is going to come up.
We're doing hobby, for our hobby time this week, we're going to spend Saturday, Sunday working on the board.
Correct. Just doing all the...
And we're going to hope that the terrain that's being mailed to me arrives by Friday.
One hope.
With the U.S. Postal Service. That was quite the gamble, sir.
It was put in the mail yesterday.
Oh, boy.
Oh. Rolling the dice there.
Luckily, it's only traveling one state, so we'll see.
Sure, we'll see. It's a rather important piece too, but if not,
it is, and we need those measurements. And so if it doesn't arrive, I don't know what we're gonna do.
Well, Tom, guess what? I just took a swing at it, so it's either gonna fit or it's not. And so I'm gonna have to.
It's due tomorrow. Let's do tomorrow.
That's fine. If it fits, then we're fine. If it doesn't, then I'm gonna have to hack apart part of my work. So that's what we'll do. Like, I looked at the picture and took a guess, and then just started cutting MDF and gluing it together.
This is what you tune into Warhammer Weekly for. This content, live package tracking, here on Warhammer Weekly.
Exactly. So we'll see. I got a lot of exciting stuff for this board. I'm really stoked about it. So we'll see. Crazy Horse posting your tracking number. It's hilarious. We can all see it together. All right. So, but anyways, we'll make it work. So it's going to be a busy hobby weekend. But I'm happy. This guy will hopefully be done by the time Tom arrives, or at least pretty close. And then I'll only have this board, just the stupid board, to finish. All my bases for the army, the last fig, and then the book for the army, and all the photos and all that stuff. So a lot. There's a lot in like the next 3 weeks.
So Vince, I have a question for you.
Sure.
Are these going to be the only rats that you haven't rebased?
The only rats that I have? What do you mean? I rebased my Skaven.
Well, exactly. So are these going to be the only rats that you own that haven't been rebased?
Oh, I see what you're saying. Because they'll be on their actual bases. Like, from the start,
Correct.
I didn't have to rebase them. Yes, because all my Skaven were on squares, and then earlier in the year, I rebased them all. So, yeah. But... yes, because these guys, I'm like their bases too, but their bases are going to take a long time. So, won't that be fun? Because I can't do anything the easy way. All right. Well, with that, let's get to Path to Glory. All right. Okie dokie. Path to Glory. Here we go. Let's bring this up. Ba-boom. There we go. Good stuff. All right. Path to Glory in AoS 3.0. So I have a little intro slide here, and then we're going to just get into some actual rules. I didn't go through and like screenshot every page, but I did take some pictures of relevant pages, just so we have conversation starters. Here's my summary based on my first read of it. And as I said, I did just read this weekend, prepping for this show. So... tell me if you think I've got the right stuff here, Paul. I think, obviously, Path to Glory is a narrative play mode. That's true. It occurs in the narrative play section. It's clearly meant to tell a story. That is absolutely part and parcel of it. I think it allows you to start with a small focused force and build over time. I think it is very new player friendly because you can start as low as 600 points, right? It does require the core book because all the rules are in the core book. They don't have the free rules. So you do need, like... You need this book in some way or another to get the rules for Path.
That's tricky of them.
Sure. And then the army books and the White Dwarf have additional Path to Glory options in the books. I think obviously you build your units up over time through play. Both your number of units can increase as well as their capabilities. So you can earn rewards for surviving or not in various ways we'll talk about. But you can reward their experience because it's basically integrating sort of RPG game mechanics, right? So you're constantly expanding and evolving the lore of your army as part of an ongoing campaign. Does that all sound right to you?
Yep, sounds good. There's a couple nuances though that I'd like to add.
Yeah, hit me. What didn't I cover that you want to lay down here? By the way, Paul is our expert, so we're all here. Paul is effectively going to teach us about Path to Glory over the course of this show. This is what this is. So hit me, man. What did I miss?
So I'm an expert because I've played a bunch of games of it, not because I, am amazing at everything. But so one of the things that's a really fun nuance is that there is no minimum battle size, right? And why that's important is because even though you might start playing a 500-point game or a 600-point game or a 1,000-point game, you're not required to make an order of battle, which is the list of the units that are going to fight in your army, that is the same size as the roster that you make for your Path to Glory army. So the reason why that's important is that you can start with a 2,000-point order of battle and start playing with 500 or 1,000-point games and really start building up that narrative on smaller units.
Right.
And it just gives you a bigger choice of what to do. And any size game is allowed and appropriate. The rules even state that if you don't even want to play with points, which I understand is far outside the comfort zone for a lot of people, that's also quite allowed. But when it talks about playing a game to begin with, you always round to the nearest 100. So you can play a game where it's 505 points versus another player playing 600 points, and that's considered a valid game for Path to Glory. And the reason why that helps to understand how the game works is because you can have models that are absolutely destroyed. You can have models that take casualties and units go out of the game, right? And so having a backup roster, right? The concept is not completely foreign to match play, where you had two different lists where you'd switch out, say, 400 or 600 points for NashCon to allow you to tailor your list. You can have a 2,000 point order of battle to play a 600 point game, and you can tailor your list to the game that you're playing, or more appropriately for narrative, to the story that you want to tell.
Right.
Right. And that's one of the coolest things that I think that Path to Glory really allows you to do. And the reason why it allows this flexibility is because Path to Glory, above and beyond almost any other game mode besides open play, but open play probably requires a dedicated partner that understands you and who you are and wants to play games that don't necessarily have the same rules that facilitate understanding. Whereas Path to Glory gives you enough of a boundary to allow you to start having the conversation about what kind of game do you want to play? How many points do you want to play? Do you want to add in some other rules? Do you want to take out some other rules? What it really encourages you to do is to engage in conversation with the other player and understand what kind of game they want to play versus what kind of game that you want to play, and then play the game that you both are there to play and to enjoy together.
Yep.
And that's a really cool opportunity that isn't really present in most other systems.
And it's a great way to like get newer players into the game,
Mm-hmm.
because you're starting at such a low bar, right?
Yep.
That like it's easy to pick up a box or two, paint up some models, and
Mm-hmm.
and have a force.
Yeah.
So it's very like new player friendly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about
Absolutely.
most getting starteds, just kind of an easy
Mm-hmm.
mode in, right? The getting started
Right.
boxes. Most getting started boxes are going to pretty easily satisfy what you need to get a roster up and going, right? For this, which is, to me, incredibly beneficial, because a lot of times somebody picks something like that up and they're like, oh, that's cool, look, I painted this, what's everything that came in this box. Okay, fine, do that 3 more times. And that can be a bit disheartening, whereas here it's like they put in the work. You can start getting those games in right away and having a fun time, and then build up the army organically, right? As to what actually catches your interest, because especially with some of these armies, if there's a lot of units, it can be hard for players to make a decision as to exactly what they feel like they want or they need, because they don't have the lived experience of playing it in the game, right?
Yep.
So how do they even know what box they're going to take off the shelf? They get 30 more units to choose from. I don't know what I want, right? I don't know what I'm going to need. But then they get some games in. They feel like, oh, what I really need is this. I want to have something more tanky in my army, or whatever. Pick the thing. They want to be able to do a thing, right? As they're
My stuff is dying too quickly. I want something that's tougher.
Right. So they can one, their potential to build things into that through the abilities that you're going to get over the course of the game, but also to just go, okay, cool, then I'll go get this unit, right? And we can start growing our force up that way. So yeah, that can add to my order of battle,
the other thing
and
is
they can swap in, even if they don't increase, as you said, even if you don't end up increasing the size, they could just make the change and still be playing at the same smaller point level, right? Game to game.
Exactly. Well, and the other thing is that because Path to Glory really enables you to have that conversation and to talk with your opponent, and to talk about what game that you have, it doesn't matter if the getting started box is important or useful in the competitive, right?
Right.
If you've got a cool guy that you've painted up, you can make a force for that guy And because the scenarios are different as well, right? It really allows you to switch the thinking that you're using to engage in these games, right? It is, I think a lot of people see Path to Glory as easy mode or as a different version of match play. And that's not at all what the system is. This system is a completely different way of playing with models that you already own. And it, like, to me, particularly somebody who is really involved in the narrative, it really allows me to increase my investment in that idea and also my investment in my narrative.
Right.
And the investment in the narrative is something that's really accessible to anybody. Anybody can tell a story, right? Not everybody can understand how this combo is going to work. So I need a Darkling Sorceress, Coven Sorceress, and then I need Dark Shards, and then I need Dread Spears, and then they'll do this thing in this specific way, and then that's a good triad to have, right? It doesn't require that. All it requires is you to have an idea of who your general is, and then you can kind of work from there. And because of the way that it's pointed, you can either choose to allow your units to take damage and heal them up so that you keep those same units, or you can allow those units to be killed and
Right,
then
to
just
deserve
buy
a
a new
trip,
unit
yeah.
instead.
Right.
Yep.
Right? And like, I mean, it's almost more cost effective if you're going to heal a unit more than once to just let that unit die and then to buy another unit of the same kind. But then you've lost that part of your narrative. So it's interesting because it almost makes it more precious than in match play, where you're constantly losing your units, but then you get them back immediately in the next game because there's no carryover from game 1 to game 2.
Right. Right.
Right.
Okay.
That's true.
So let's kind of go through the thing itself here. So Path to Glory, basic stuff. Because we've got a lot of this is out of the, as I said, this is out of the core rules. You can find this section in the back in narrative play. This is a big section of rules. Like, this is a meaty thing. I, again, did not realize just how meaty this was until I picked it up and started going through it and was like, wow, Jeezel Pete's. This is, like, a lot of stuff. Because
it's a very robust rule set.
Yeah, it really is. It's something like 30 plus pages of rules. So, at any rate, the point there being you will have plenty to keep you going for quite a while. Like, yeah, there we go. That's the Path to Glory section right there. That's how big it is. So, pretty significant.
I will say the core rules are required to play narrative play. You really have to understand how the game works.
Right.
And then narrative play is a battle pack that goes on top of the core rules. So that allows for some differences in play, right? For match play, you need battle line units. Yep. For Path to Glory, you don't.
Right.
It allows for a different buildup of lists. So you definitely do need to read those core rules and have a basic understanding. But then once you've got that, then it just gives you this like cornucopia of ideas of how to play your army.
Yeah, and what I love about this is it's funny because I think you could lay additional stuff on here, and I'm sure some people have. Like, there are concepts of you controlling territories and things like that. So you could certainly lay a full map type of campaign on this, or even within a big city or something like that. Yep. Like there are, you know what I'm saying? Like there are other layers you could put on top of this. I'm sure quite easy. I'm sure there's probably somebody out there who has. One of the things you do need for this, they have little pages you can use in the book, but whatever. You need your roster, right? Your specific roster and your order of battle. Those two sheets. Those exist out of the book. There's also people who've made alternative versions of them. We'll look at one later on. I did link the Weird Boys. The Austin Weird Boys are back again. And they made a really nice version of this that I quite like. When I was hunting around, I looked at the different versions. I quite liked theirs that they created. It feels pretty much like the one in the book. It's formatted nicely. So that's linked down below. So you can just go there and download that and then print those to your heart's content or whatever.
So also as a note, they also do have a Path to Glory journal, which I've found super helpful.
Flexing.
Well, but actually I'm flexing in order to say that it does not include the roster and the order of battle in the pages.
Gotcha.
Which is I don't know if it's an intentional oversight or if it's an accidental oversight. But that is something that I've been like, oh, everything is in here except for all my units and keeping track of all the stuff in between games, right? It's amazing for keeping track of stuff in game and for encouraging you to talk in that narrative, right? So just, one of the things that asks you to fill in is what's the name of your opponent's general? What's the name of your opponent's army? So it starts that conversation immediately of like, tell me your narrative. Like, I want to have this conversation with you. I want to engage in this story with you, which has been super cool. But I do miss the roster and the order of battle not being in the book itself.
For sure. And I'll say that, when they're, like, you can read here from the rip on page 1, that they're very much trying to seat you in a world that you're experiencing, like, to make it more visceral. Because I say that because, like, when you look at the Path to Glory roster, when you're going through the steps, and we're going to kind of walk everybody through this tonight, right? You have stuff like, so you've got your faction, of course, like always. Fine. We're all used to that. You play whatever. Cool. We all get that. But then you have a territory that you own. You've got your stronghold, which allows certain benefits. You like, and as you build it up over time into an imposing or mighty stronghold and whatever, you've got your vault, right? And all this stuff. They're trying to use these very like tangible physical words, right? These aren't just like amorphous game concepts. I mean, they are. They're game elements, right? But they're using those words intentionally, right? So that it feels like, no, you're not just a sort of hypothetical force like we play in match play that's just like, oh, sure, the battle's taking place here. It's just kind of happening in amorphous area, yada, 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 right?
Right.
No, it's a thing. They live somewhere. They have things. They own physical property, right? Like this, it matters. There's attachment. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and the first thing that you do is you choose that faction and you choose that realm, and that's the end of the things that you can't change going forward. Right? Step 1 is the only thing you can't change.
Well, speaking of which, boom. Yeah. Let's go over here to the Path to Glory overview. I apologize, there's a little reflection on the page, but such is life. Deal with it. I could not find an angle to shoot this thing out where it didn't either look dark or light without some kind of reflection. So, because the camera on my phone sucks, but that's okay. So, yeah, step 1, choose a faction and a realm, right? It's exactly what you said. Everybody's gonna pick a faction and pick a realm, and that's kind of locked in, right? This is where you are, what you're fighting over. This is the faction you stick to. Now, that's not to say you couldn't play another campaign later. You couldn't retire your force and start over, all of that kind of stuff, and choose a different faction. Like, again, it doesn't mean that you're just done forever, right?
No.
But it means within the scope of what you're doing, most other things we're going to do here are going to be pretty variable over the course of the campaign.
Yep.
Right?
Yeah, everything else is going to be variable, right? You're going to be playing different scenarios. You might have different generals.
Right.
You will definitely have different units. Everything else changes. But this step 1, right? And the thing I love is that, it's the who, what, when, where, right? So this is the what and the where, right?
Right.
Where am I? I'm in this realm. What am I? I am Ironjaws. I am Gloomspike Gitz, right? Like, it starts to answer those questions. And, that's how you would tell a story, is you have to figure out from the get-go what story you're trying to tell. And these rules literally help you to answer those questions without hitting you over the head with it, which is super fun.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so that's step 1. We all can wrap our head around that, right? Like, I think you summed it up perfectly. Like, what are you playing? Where's your army at? Great. Okay, easy. Tom, who would you pick in this mental exercise? Who you taking on this path to glory, Tom?
I think I'm gonna take me a Settler's Gain.
Okay.
Settler's Gain. All right. So you're in Hish.
Yeah.
I'm in Hish.
And you're doing Cities of Sigmar.
Yes.
All right.
And so obviously I will do, but let's just, as I walk through this, I'll use examples of obviously Skig, and my and my redeemed Ratcast, of course. So my Stormcast. Like this is if there was ever an army that should be brought into this kind of a setting, it's this sort of a thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So then step 2, choose your starting size and your territories, which we'll go into kind of these in detail. But take us through this step. So what's happening here, Paul?
So basically, what you're doing is you're writing your order of battle, right? And at first you look at it and you say, okay, well, this is the amount of models that I have, so therefore I only have 600 points of models painted, so I'm going to choose Vanguard and I'm going to do 600 points. And that's going to give me a limit of 6 units total, and I'm going to have a starting glory of 5. And I'll stop you right there, because that's not actually the way you should start step 2. Because step 2 is if you've decided that you want to do a 2,000 point army, right? Or if you've decided that you want to do, say, Beast Claw Raiders, right? You can actually go in and you can choose a different starting size. So if you want to do, if you want to do like me, a bunch of Arachnaroks, right? You only have one monster, and you can buy a territory to get a second monster. But then you can't get a third monster at Vanguard or Warband because you only get one extra territory. But if you do Brigade, which is 1,500 points starting, then you can get 3 monsters because you have 2 starting territories. If you want to do Legion, then you can get 4 monsters, right? Because that's 2,000 points.
Right.
Now, for the Arachnaroks, if I want to do heroes, then I have to kind of switch it up. So what you really need to ask yourself is, what kind of an army do I want to build? Do I want to build a Skaven army that's a ton of war machines? Okay, well, I'm only allowed 1, but I can have up to 4 if I do an order of battle of 2,000 points, or I can choose to start with 1 and then buy them as we go on, right? So if you have an army that you feel you are not going to have fun playing without a ton of wizards because your army doesn't work, say Night Haunt, right? Okay, well then do a starting territories for 3 with Legion at 2,000 points and populate that order of battle in order to get those wizards, to get those heroes on the table. And you can just run 4 wizards. You can just run 4 heroes if that's what you have. Great. That's your starting army. You know what? It's going to be really hard because all you have is 4 models on the table. But if that's the story you want to tell, then great. Because once you start earning glory, then you can bring in those other units, or you can run those 4 heroes for 1 battle, and then the next battle you let them recuperate and then they get a bonus to heal, and then you bring in some other units that you have, right? So this is something that I've thought about pretty much a lot, because I'm running my 3rd order of battle now, and I've decided to start with a Living City army, and I'm starting at 2,000 points because I have a story that I want to work through. So the thing is, I want to tell a story about a Dawnbringer Crusade. And so my Dawnbringer Crusade is going to be based on 1 character, and that character is Petrol. Petrol the Thornborn. But Petrol the Thornborn, in my mind, is a ranger, right? He's a human, reclaimed ranger, loner. So what he wants to do is he wants to build more cities, more strong points out in the wilds, right? But you can bet that he's not going to go in the first excursion where he might die because he's the guy who's running everything. He's going to send out a force of 600 to 1,000 points and see how that goes, right? So you don't have to run your character in your army. That's an important thing. You have to pick a character to be the focus of your order of battle, and then the faction goes off of that character. But that character doesn't have to be in your army if A, you don't want him to be because you don't want to risk him because he could die. He could suffer permadeath. And then where does your story go, right?
Right.
Or B, because you want to tell a different story that doesn't involve the biggest guy that you have game 1. Right? So there's actually a lot of choice right away in step 2 of what story do I want to tell? And then I need to choose my order of battle based on what story that I want to tell.
Yeah. And we'll kind of take a look at some of these points and things, but the key there I think is worth drilling in on. You mentioned it earlier and it's worth mentioning again, is that just because you choose to play at effectively 1,500 points or 2,000 points doesn't mean that's the size of every game you're playing. Right?
Right.
that's the pool.
Right.
That's the pool that you're forming your army out of.
Right.
Or that's the pool that you're forming your playable units each match.
Yeah, there you
Correct.
go.
Yeah, that's why I compared it to having the sideboard, right? Because that's basically the idea. If you start off playing a Vanguard order of battle, and you play every game with at least 500 points, right? You're going to end up losing at least one of those units over the course of the battle. If these units are super important, you've written a big background about them, that might not be something that you want to do, right? If you get super invested in the narrative before you've even played a game, well then maybe you want to do a Legion order of battle so you can rest those units and make sure that they don't take a ton of damage because you want to preserve their story, right?
Right.
Definitely an option. It's how you want to play it. If you're somebody who's playing a Warriors of Chaos army, right? Like, so if you're playing, Korn or Zinch or whatever, and you're like, look, these guys just go and they kill things. And then when they die, they're gone because I have more, right? Especially if you're talking about running the war bands from Warcry, right? Like, those guys are going to die like flies. Well, if that's your story, great. That's your story. You're going to throw them into battle. They're going to die. You're not going to heal them. And then eventually they're going to go away. Right? And that's a cool story too. What story do you want to tell?
Yep. So step 3 is the order of battle itself. You start adding units to your path to glory, starting with your warlord. And we kind of talked about that. We'll kind of get into each of these in a little more detail. Step 4 is your core enhancements. So once you've added all your units, you get your core enhancements, which is going to be very familiar, by the by, to anyone who's played match play, because it looks like basically any other time when we make a match play army, you get to add enhancements. The trick here is that's just, unlike in match play where that is the alpha and the omega, right? Here, it's just where you begin. This is your command trait. This is your artifact. This is your whatever, your stuff, right? That's making you unique. But as time goes on, not only can you effectively add to those enhancements, you're also going to have then other abilities that are going to kick in on your units or your leaders or so on as they evolve as well. So there's going to be multiple ways your force grows. Yeah, thank you. Yes, they effectively level up. Yes.
Yep, exactly.
And then step 5 is pick your first quest, which is basically you're determining what are you on about here, right? And there's a whole big list of quests. I think there are 16 in the core rules. Is that right?
There are 8 in the narrative play.
There you go. Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
to start with.
You're right. Sorry, 8. Yes. Sorry.
Yep. But then they add them as they go on.
Yes, and so that quest is basically determinative of what's your goal. What are you trying to reach? And we'll talk about those when we get there.
Well, so that's like a chapter, right?
Yes.
If you're telling a novel, the quests are your chapters.
That's a great way to put it. I like that. Because not as though that's going to be the only thing you ever do with the army, right? It's going to be one of many things that you do with the army. Yes.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. So here I've just got a sample of the roster, so you can see kind of what it looks like. As we mentioned, there's a lot going on here as far as, this is a more involved process. So this is why I brought up the roster, and I want to just have it here and just kind of leave it here for a second so people can kind of see what's going on. But also I thought it was interesting to say, I think this is a good place to start the game. I really do. But I do think we need to have a moment of honesty that, look, there's more to this.
There's a lot of bookkeeping
than match play, right? Like, one of the simple advantages of match play is, honestly, it's pretty straightforward, right? It's a pretty simple skeleton of rules you lay down to get a game going between two people.
Yep.
Right? This is more than that. It is. So it might sound weird to people that I'm saying, hey, a good way to start is to not only have all of the base rules effectively, but also then layer on more. Now, I think the difference here is, if you've ever played like an RPG ever, a lot of this stuff is going to be familiar to you, because it feels, when you're building your army, it feels a lot more like building a character, the way you go through the steps, right? They're very organic into what you're picking. Yeah. and the consequences of your choices are laid out, pretty plainly. Like there's not a lot of hidden traps in here. It is very new player friendly, right? Like you want to do this thing, pick this thing. You want to do this thing, pick this thing. That's
Yeah.
It's not exactly tricky. Like, oh, I had 2 monsters I wanted to use. As you mentioned, like, okay, there's a territory that enables the second monster if you're playing at a small points game, right? No issue. Boom, bang. There you go. You're going to select that one. There's your second monster. Job's a good one, right?
Yep. Well, and the thing that is different for match play versus Path to Glory is that if you spent the entire time before you played a game in match play with a new player, helping them to write their list, right? Then you're explaining to them how to play their army. And you're probably doing that by giving examples from your army of how your army plays, right? So when you play that match play game, you're going to know exactly what their army does. And as a new player, maybe that will give you an advantage to be able to help them to have a good game, but also at the same time, you know everything that their army does, and there are no tricks to understand, and we're all playing the same game, and the point of a match play game is, to win or to help a player to play, right? But when you're doing an order of battle, you're not necessarily going through and being like, all right, so what are you trying to accomplish with a 2,000 point match play list?
Right.
You're saying, what do you want to play with? So this can be a collaborative process between 2 players without detracting from the game that follows thereafter.
Yeah.
Right? And that's an important thing, especially if you're playing 2,000 points, right, for your order of battle and you're playing a 500-point game. It allows the other player to have some agency and say, okay, I've built a 2,000-point order of battle, 1,000-point, 1,500, whatever, but I'm going to choose which units that I want to fight the battle with. Right? And the other thing is that because we have a whole aftermath phase, which we're going to get to, right, they get rewarded for simply playing the game.
Right.
And that reward carries on in their narrative, right? And then when you do the aftermath phase as well, that's also intended to be a joint process,
right,
where you two are talking together about what happened. And, it also conveniently also says, all right, what's the narrative for your army? Let's build your order of battle based around your narrative. And then after the game, okay, how did this game go? What details were important? What details made sense? Let's talk about the story of the game afterwards as well.
Yep. Yep. And here's what I'll say. You mentioned the aftermath, and we will talk about that as we go on through this. And I'm not talking about the Dr. Dre's aftermath. I'm just talking about the aftermath of the battle. And if you're a Mordheim fan, I mentioned this before the show as well, and I think I saw somebody throw this out in the comments earlier. It's gonna feel familiar to you. Let me just say that.
Yep.
Like it's the kind of thing that I hope I would love it if they did some more, like a whole supplement for this kind of, like, expanded some of these concepts out some, because I think they could do a lot with, like, expanding things like territories and maybe strongholds with additional types or abilities or special things or bonuses and drawbacks and on and on and on, right? Like, because every one of these things can be tooled with now that it's in.
Conveniently, they're already doing that in the Battle Tomes and in White Dwarf.
Yes. I was going to say, yes, in the White Dwarf and in the Battle Tomes, there are, in the 3.0 ones, you get a new section of Path to Glory stuff specifically for you. I hope they give, I think it'd be great if they also just did generic expansions of that stuff. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I will also point out one thing that we haven't addressed that is probably pretty important. If you played Path to Glory in 1.0, 2.0, this is not that Path to Glory.
Right.
The reason why we're talking about Path to Glory in 3.0 is this is completely different, right? And so if you open up, say, your Beasts of Chaos Battle Tome and you see Path to Glory, that's not the Path to Glory we're talking about, and that won't necessarily be helpful, and that will be far more restrictive than the system that we're talking about for 3.0. And that's why Vince clarified at the beginning, we're talking about Path to Glory in 3.0. It's a completely new way of playing Path to Glory, even though it's titled exactly the same.
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. Rodney R said, those early games, if you start at Vanguard, are so much fun. They go so fast. I managed 4 games in about 2 hours because you can just re-rack and get more games in. Absolutely. Huge Benny. And I know they drew a lot from the Crusade system in
Mm-hmm.
40K for this, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, it's not exactly that, but they drew inspiration from it. And it's funny, I watched a couple people play 2 Crusade games when I was
Mm-hmm.
over the course of like last year when I was teaching a class. I
Yeah.
taught like one class last year during COVID times, and um, and it looked like a lot of fun. Like I was watching their Crusade
Mm-hmm.
games, I was like, that seems like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Um, and I was like, huh, that's kind of interesting, and then moved on. And then when I saw this and was reading this weekend, I was like, that feels very. There are
Uh-huh.
things here that feel very familiar to what I saw them do and was happening in that game. So I thought it was pretty funny.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Yeah. Well, and not only does it borrow a lot from Crusade, it also borrows a lot from Warcry
yeah,
and their campaign system and their way of leveling up. And the nice thing is, it doesn't feel like they just took it from Warcry
no,
and shoved
No.
AoS on it and said it's now a new narrative system. It not at all. They did create a new bespoke system that really plays to AoS's strengths as well.
yeah. Yeah, it's a little bit of like if you took the blender pitch would be like Mordheim meets Crusade meets Warcry,
Hmm.
and then plus a little secret sauce all put in the blender together, right? That would
Yeah.
be the pitch. Okay.
Well, and also, I think it benefits from the fact that all those other systems have already been designed, and they've been able to take cues from each of them and figure out what works and what doesn't work and
Yep.
move forward, right? And the Path to Glory supplements in White Dwarfs starting at 3.0 is a very direct sign that they've taken lessons from Crusade. They've taken lessons from
Mhm.
Warcry to really push that forward.
Right. Right. Absolutely agreed. I'm gonna follow along here in my actual book. That way I have the full references to look at. Okay.
Hmm.
So fighting Path to Glory battles.
Hmm.
So you've got a couple different things here. Again, I don't have like I'm not gonna. This isn't gonna be every page because I didn't just make a presentation out of 30 pages. But I thought these would just be good conversation starters, right?
Yep.
Um, so you've got things like the tier of battle,
Hmm.
which is dependent on your stronghold. Okay,
Yep.
Mhm.
and then you have and then there are bonus enhancements that come out of that, right?
Hmm.
Yep.
Based on the particular tier. Now, obviously, if we're talking about starting Path to Glory, like you're
Hmm.
just starting out, then
Yep.
then you're going to be in lower, right?
Hmm.
So
Right.
effectively, you're in uh, you're in that one of each category, right?
Hmm.
So your
Right.
vault has one of
Yeah.
these things in there because that's how the rules standard
Yeah.
work, and you can
Yep.
have one of them in your army. So,
Yep.
badoom,
Well,
there you go.
so actually, you get your core enhancements, which is everything that you pick on your normal army list for match play. Then, for a lower tier of battle, you get one of each again
Oh, okay,
as a
cool.
bonus enhancement that you can earn. But it's limiting, so you can only have one of each. Not, so you end up having two. But the most you can have in a lower tier battle is you can have two of each kind of enhancement over the course of the battle. And if you want to use more than that, then you've got to upgrade your stronghold to be a better stronghold, and your opponent also needs to have a better stronghold too. Otherwise, you're kind of picking and choosing from those. So it makes it a little bit of a leveler, a little bit.
Yeah. And we should talk about yeah, sure, because if they have a because both players have to have the same stronghold to participate, right? So yes,
Yep.
you'll effectively tier down to the
Hmm.
lower person. So
Yeah.
strongholds you mentioned like what they do. Let's talk a little bit but I think before we get into that, we should talk just a little about glory, right? This
Hmm.
concept.
Yeah.
Okay? Because we mentioned that with your starting force at that particular point level, right? You're going to be you're going to be at a you're going to have a certain amount of starting glory. Like let's say
Yep.
the lowest one Vanguard's okay, we got 5 glory. Great.
Hmm.
Okay. Fantastic. Um the uh tell me about glory. What all is glory doing, Paul? He said, knowing that the answer is a heck of a lot.
Yeah. Glory is basically talking about how well known you are, right? Narratively, it's like, how big of a deal are you? Are you a big deal? Are you kind of a big deal? Are you like small potatoes, right? What does that mean? And the way that that's reflected in the game mechanics is that you're allowed to use glory to upgrade your stronghold, which means that you can make your stronghold bigger. And each time you upgrade it in a specific way, it gives you different abilities, right? So if you add barracks to your stronghold, then you can have more units that you can add to your order of battle. So instead of having 6, you can add 8 because every barracks gives you 2, right?
Yep.
The other thing that glory allows you to do is it allows you to recuperate the units that have actually taken damage in battle. You pay a certain amount of glory based on the points total of the unit to make a recuperate roll to heal them up. Because units can take casualties that affect how many models out of that unit you're actually allowed to put on the table at the beginning of the game, right? And the other thing that glory allows you to do is it allows you to buy territories. So functionally, it's allowing you to expand your empire. And so for any of those people who've been playing map campaigns before, especially in, say, Warhammer Fantasy, where the point of the map campaign was to wipe out all the weak people so that all the strong people could just keep playing and consolidate all the territory, that's not this kind of map campaign, right? You're conquering your own lands, and your opponent can't necessarily take them from you unless there's a rule that allows them to take a specific, right?
Right.
Maybe that's something we'll add in later, right? You're creating your own kingdom. You're literally building your own empire. And so glory is really the thing that enables you to grow and to add things to your empire, whether it be a unit, a hero, territory, or a stronghold itself, or to upgrade your stronghold from just a standard stronghold to an imposing or a mighty, which again gives you better abilities in game as long as your opponent has done the same thing. So,
yep. So and the key are being it's it is the central currency that you're going to gain, you're going to spend. Scenarios can give you bonus and stuff like that. Like it's a thing. It's going to be this ever present thing.
It's a central currency that affects most of the things not on the tabletop.
There you go. Yes.
Because it expands your order of battle, allows you to have more monsters, right? It allows you to have more units. But then the confusing thing for me when I first read through it was that we have glory and then we have something else called renown. So, did you want to move on to renown now, or
let's save it. We'll get.
All right, sounds good.
We'll get there. All right. So, we walked through our basic steps, right? Of our. We're gonna wait on aftermath. So let's just kind of on this. Let's take a little journey in a deeper dive through these steps of making a thing, right? So you chose your faction, you chose your starting size. We mentioned those limits. And I like how, you can pick your territory. As you mentioned, you start with a stronghold. Okay? So let's just explain the stronghold to everybody at once here, right? So we'll kind of just break this down.
So the stronghold is the mechanic that allows you to expand your order of battle functionally, right? Especially if you picked max units and you picked max requirements when you picked your order of battle. Your stronghold is the thing that allows you to increase that.
Okay. So your stronghold gives you 3 things, effectively, right? I mean, just like straight up in the rules. Territories. You can control up to 3 territories at once. Barracks. Your stronghold can have up to 3 barracks, which, as you mentioned already, every barrack allows you to have 2 units, right? And outposts. You get 1 outpost. So walk us through what that, like, we already talked about barracks. We get that. That's how that's what generates your units, right? That's your sort of one of your unit limiters. Take us through what the territories are meaning, and we already gave some examples, and what the outpost is meaning.
So the outpost is something that for most armies won't actually be applicable because it's a 3.0 battle tome or upgrade mechanic. So an outpost is a faction specific, usually it's 61 to 66. When you're rolling for your territories, you roll a d66. Usually 61 through 66 is a faction-specific outpost result. So, for example, Auric War Clans have results for 61 through 66.
Right.
The generic also has rolls for 61 to 66, but it's basically like, oh, you get to pick whatever territory that you want to, right? But Auric War Clans, Stormcast, Sons of Bahamut, Warriors of Chaos, Slaves to Darkness, And I've heard as well that Seraphon now are going to have these outposts. But until you get that White Dwarf update, until you get that third ed battle tome, outpost is going to be something you don't have to worry about because it's something not available to you. Now, I will also point out that having 3.0 rules doesn't actually necessarily make your army stronger. In a lot of cases, having the 3.0 rules, say Stormcast and Orcs, it's much cheaper to just buy a model that does the thing that you want to. But what the mechanics allow you to do for Stormcast and for Auric War Clans is you're allowed to upgrade your Warlord from, say, on foot to having a Maw Crusher, right? The amount of points that it costs, it'd be cheaper to just buy a Maw Crusher. But again, this is a narrative system, so you want you to tell that story from beginning to end. And then the territories is literally you defining your empire. Right. But in game terms, what that allows you to do is that when you pick your starting order of battle, there is a chart where it says you can have up to 3 hero units, up to 1 monster unit, up to 1 more machine unit, up to 1 wizard, 1 priest, 1 reinforced, and 1 allied unit. Everything is 1 except for heroes, right? Most territories will allow you to increase one of those limits, right? And you buy a territory for 10 glory points. You have to play games in order to advance along this this thing. And typically you roll for your territories. So those 1, 2, or 3 territories that you choose to begin with are super important because that's the last time that you know for sure you're going to get what you want.
Right.
Right? Then there are also other territories that allow you to enhance abilities. So Wellspring is a really good territory where typically when you're rolling to try and recover units, it'll increase that roll. And if you want your units to stay around, if you've formed a story around them, that Wellspring is going to be super important. So it might be something, if you've already invested in a narrative, that you might choose to have the Wellspring and keep all those hard limits on everything else because you want to make sure that the units that you have chosen are going to stick around. And that Wellspring is definitely going to allow you to do that.
Right. Right on. Okay.
Go ahead.
Good. No, I was going to say, so we've got our stronghold territory. We understand our limits. Now this is where the big show starts, Paul, because we got to talk about the Warlord, right? This is the thing. This is what you're building. This is you already told us the story of your guy. Mine would obviously be Skig, right? Skig is clearly my Warlord, no doubt about it.
Exactly.
So Tom, probably some kind of elf or something. I don't know.
I mean, maybe.
Like a guy with a bird friend.
Yep.
And
mini bird.
So tell us about the Warlord, because this is an important choice, both narratively and in the rules too.
So the Warlord is super interesting to me because the Warlord is the character which your faction keys off of, right? But again, as I said earlier when I was talking about my character Petrol the Thornborn, your Warlord doesn't actually have to be in the battle, right? So you can choose a Warlord, and the benefit of the Warlord is that he gets 15 renown to start off with, so he immediately counts as a hero. And renown is something that allows you to progress your units and your characters.
Right.
But beyond that, he doesn't have any other special abilities. So if you want your main character to be something like your elf friend with a bird, right? You can make an Anvil of Apotheosis hero if you and your opponent have agreed in that social contract that we're going to use Anvil of Apotheosis heroes and say, I want an elf hero and he has to have a bird friend and I want him to have a cool bow. All right, well then you go in and you build that unit, that model in Anvil of Apotheosis, but he can't be your Warlord because your faction is dependent upon your Warlord, and you're going to Anvil of Apotheosis doesn't have all the keywords in it right now, right? So for example, it doesn't have Squig. So I built a Squig, a Squigalanche, but my main character, his name is Zick Pizzle Squig Smasher, he can't be my Warlord because he's an Anvil of Apotheosis hero and they don't have the Squig thing. unless you agree with your opponent, we'll just give them the squig keyword out of the workout fine. I'm not
Which
worried
as we've
about
talked
balance.
about before, and
Yeah.
as I think even Sam had talked about on Twitter originally,
Mhm.
like if you and your opponent agree, just add those secondary keywords. He's like, it's not a big deal, just do it.
Yeah.
So
It's not yeah. It's not like the squig, the Zick Pizzle that I built was anywhere near as good as the bog standard loon boss on Giant Squig.
right.
Because he wasn't. You know, like so, if you if your main character is the thing that really drives you, right? Then build that main character, right?
Yeah.
Kit bash that main character. Make Anvil of Apotheosis. If you've already got something that the rules fit your character, great. Go ahead and use that model and move forward. But really, this warlord is the linchpin which the whole story should continue backwards from, right?
Yep. Somebody asked where is Anvil of Apotheosis currently. It is
Mhm.
still it's the place where it's published, which was the last GHB. So
Correct.
that's where you have to go to get it. That's why I never get rid of old General's handbooks because yes, maybe
Yep.
the match play section changed, but almost every GHB has tons of useful stuff beyond that that I still use to this day.
Mhm.
Like the amount of usage I got out of the 2017 GHB because it was the first one that included all the different multiplayer
Yep.
things. Oh my god, endless. I have gotten the road miles I have gotten out of that out of that GHB.
Yep.
Anyways,
So yeah,
and to me, it's not like so. To be clear with everybody, it's not like Anvil is a dedicated part of
nope.
Path to Glory, right?
Right.
It's
Mhm.
that if you were ever going to use it,
Now is the time.
now is the time, right? Like this is your moment.
Seize the
was what
day.
it was created for. Yes.
Yeah, exactly. Like this is where it has such a perfect home, right?
Mhm.
In a narrative focused game wherein all of your units are going to be getting interesting
Right.
abilities to upgrade, to enhance, to change, to grow. Like, yes, of course, this is if you've dreamed of the mega boss on Pig, this
Mhm.
is the day. Okay,
Right.
here
Yes.
we're here. It's happened. Okay. So at any rate.
Yeah.
So yeah,
So,
you've got your warlord. You
Mhm.
then fill out the rest of your starting units, right?
Yep.
And this is a big change from 2.0 because the
Yes.
old Path to Glory, right, was like
Mhm.
a roll, if I remember right? It was just you
Yeah.
rolled on a
Well,
table.
so it was like the fifth edition Warriors of Chaos, where you would pick a
Yeah.
warlord and then you would pick a retinue.
Yes.
But they told you what your retinue was, and so you pick a warlord, and then you would have a choice of this many units, and then you would roll to see which of those units was going to spontaneously follow this character, right,
Right.
based on their renown. Um, so the warlord and the starting units, right, which can include heroes as well. It doesn't have to necessarily be like 5 to 10 man units. Is all intended to fit within that order of battle, right?
Yep.
So the other thing is that you automatically get to pick a battalion, an endless spell, or a vocation, an invocation, right? So this is something that I missed when I first started off with, is that you can just get a battalion, build it into your army, and use it right away, right? And the same thing with an endless spell or an invocation, which for me wasn't great with squigs because I have no casters, right? But
Sure.
we do have those white dwarf rules for the Squigapalooza,
Yep.
right? So, like, again, it's a perfect opportunity to talk to your opponent and be like, hey, I converted up these models. Can we agree on points or, like, how to use that? Like, this is exactly the vehicle with which to use those ideas and those rules.
Yeah.
So,
And to really hammer this home for everybody with this part, let's just make a little note here that we're used to matched play now. We only have our core battalions, but remember,
Right.
in Path to Glory, you can still use War Scroll battalions, like
yep.
the one of this unit and two of this unit and one of this unit, and they have a points cost to them, and so on and so forth.
Mhm.
That is still valid. The invocation or endless spell or battalion, if you can use the core battalions too, by the way, and still benefit from them. So if you want to use like, if you want to have, I don't know, what would be a good example?
It's gonna be one drop.
Well,
Yeah.
sure, or like Command entourage. Yeah, you can have 3 heroes. There you go. That works. So you want if you want the command entourage, you can still get that and get the bonus associated with it, right? So fine. But if you pick one of those things, you do have to still pay the points for them on your roster. So they count against your points. Okay. Awesome. And then you pick your first quest. Let's talk about quests a little, shall we? So yes, as you mentioned, there are 8 quests. And I'm going to just pick a sample one here, Paul, and kind of read through it. I think one that, is going to be very obvious for people. Here we go. Quest: search for the artifact. You send your scouts far and wide in search of a powerful relic of war. Pick one artifact of power that your faction has access to and that is not already on your Path to Glory roster. Write it down in the quest reward section of your quest log. At the end of each Path to Glory battle, add 1 quest point to the progress section of your quest log for each friendly unit wholly within your opponent's territory. So you could have multiple points you're adding there in a single battle, depending on how you ended. In addition, at the end of each Path to Glory battle, you can spend 1 glory point to gain 1 additional quest point. So more use for glory. Again, it is this currency, right? Once you have gained 3 or more quest points, you complete this quest. When you complete this quest, you can add the artifact of power that you picked to your vault.
Right? Great.
Yeah.
And so that's the base.
Yeah.
That's kind of a very simple structure of kind of how some of these type of quests work.
Yeah. So I will point out that there's 2 different kinds of rules for these quests.
Yes.
So there is the search for the artifact type of rules where it says you must do this thing. But if you don't do this thing, you can still make progress by spending a glory point, right? Then, for example, 4 warriors into a battalion, you have to have the minimum units that are required to fill out the battalion on the table at the end of the game. If you don't have that, you can't buy it.
Right.
You just don't get it. Right? So if you're not winning your games, right? If you're not ending with models on the table, some of these are going to be impossible. Right? So for a starting player, especially, you want to pick the quests that allow you to spend glory to add a quest point. And yes, it might take you 3 games, but you can do it. As opposed to some of the other ones where it's a much harder.
Yeah, it's a good piece of advice.
Yeah, exactly. That's such a good point. Because some of these are, I mean, let's be honest. Some of these quests are harder than others. As you would expect, right? So, if, for example, seek a deific blessing, which is the one to go get an invocation, right? This one can be actually quite a hard quest to complete. It might take you a couple games because of the nature of what you have to do to complete it. Seeking a deific blessing is what I said. You're going after an invocation, right? So you pick this, you write down the invocation you want in your quest log. So you're a Fire Slayers player or whatever, somebody who has invocations, right?
You want that in burn off. Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Then the way this one works is you roll, so you're playing your battle plan, you roll out all your terrain, right, to see what it is. So deadly, inspiring, etc. And what you're hoping for is that something pops mystical, because this is what you ultimately need. Okay?
Yep.
Now, if it didn't, if after you roll on the table, there's no, I guess you don't have to be any. You can just choose to do this, whether or not there's any there. But after you roll on the serious terrain table, you can choose to spend a glory to change the result to mystical. So you can make mystical terrain for glory, right? But then, even after you've either rolled it or spent the glory to make the mystical appear, all right, so now it's out there, at the end of a Path to Glory battle, if a friendly priest is within 1 inch of a terrain feature with the mystical scenery roll, you complete this quest, right? And when you complete it, you can add the invocation.
But you have to keep them alive and get them on that piece of terrain.
Yes, so you have to get the mystical or pay to get the mystical, then keep them alive until the end of the game and keep them on that terrain piece, right? So, yeah, so some of these can be tough, right?
So
yes.
basically, the format that we have here is 4 of these quests, so half of these quests, gain you a unique enhancement or a bonus enhancement
Right.
that you can use on your army, right? One of them gets you a battalion, and then you just get that battalion, right? Then that's not a bonus enhancement. That's not restricted. So like battalions are something that you can kind of stack on. Then you also have the endless spell, which isn't a listed because you pay points for it, right? It's not a bonus enhancement, but allows you to add that. And then defend your realm and scout fertile lands are 2 things that allow you to manipulate the rules of the game, right?
Yep.
So defend your realm allows you to just get 10 glory points, right? If you're not winning and you just want some glory points to start doing some cool stuff, take defend your realm, because it's not a everything has to be on the table at the end of the board or you can't do it. It's one of those that allows you to pay a glory in order to add 1 to the quest point, and at 3 games, as long as you pay the glory, you're going to get an extra 10 glory points, right?
Worst
it's kind
case,
of
you're paying 3 to get 10.
Yeah. Exactly. Worst case, you're paying 3 to get 10. And then the Scout Fertile Lands allows you to roll twice when you're scouting for territories instead of once, right? So those 2 are more of manipulating the rules. And then you have the 4 unique bonus enhancements, and then 2 of them are just expansions to your order of battle functionally.
Yep.
Good.
This is another thing that they could do 50 variations on, frankly, and just
absolutely
quests forever. Okay. So we've talked now, we got all that. We talked about fighting Path to Glory battles, setting the tier, the nature of bonus enhancements, all this kind of stuff, right? They have a little section on picking your army, right? And sort of the rules that go into here. And they also, by the way, have rules in here for fighting an opponent not on a Path to Glory campaign, which is nice. They have a little flow chart. I really liked this. Like, hey, you've got a force. Your opponent doesn't happen to be playing Path to Glory. Can I still play a game with my force against them? Yeah, sure, of course. Here's how.
Absolutely.
Do. Right? Easy.
Well, and the other thing is that it is a little bit of easy mode too, right? You don't really take most of the penalties that you take playing a Path to Glory game, but you're allowed to earn that glory and to move forward without taking the penalties. So, I mean, if you are interested in playing a Path to Glory game, but you're already, all your opponents have already experienced, go play a tournament. Write up an order of battle for your tournament list. Go play a tournament. Get those glory points. And you've got 5 2,000 point games. And you've got a ton of glory that you can move forward with. Right? And that's an easy catch-up mode. Right? All that requires you to do is go play 5 match play games. And all of a sudden you've got a heap of glory point to start investing and really work out that plan. So even if everybody else has already played, you can do catch-up mode too, which is something I really appreciate.
I like this, so we can farm the narrative. I'm there for it.
Exactly.
All right, I need to add one more item to my checklist for Holy Havoc. I got to write up my Path to Glory roster for Skag, for Skag and take him. So I can be like, after the battle, I'll be doing everything for Steve's game and all that narrative and upgrading my warlord and all that's in there. But then also I'm going to be over here like updating my roster. There'll be a lot going on. We'll be playing for You're going to have
a 45 minutes between rounds.
Right.
Hold on. What's this unit still on the table?
Wait, I'm doing a separate quest. Hold on.
I'm doing a separate quest.
What are you talking about? Look, I'm on a different quest over here. Don't worry about it. It's fine.
Wait, do I need to fill out that paperwork for Steve? Nope. Just ignore Vince.
Yeah, I got a lot going on here.
Do I take casualties from the Arachnarok that ate my unit? Does that count for Path to Glory? Or does that not count for Path to Glory? I can't remember.
Yeah, exactly. It's gonna be complicated. All right. So you fought a game, and now it's time for the aftermath. This is the millennium of aftermath. Okay. I've got the basic here, right? And step 1 is earn glory points. And so this is going to be one of those things. When I read this, it felt very familiar to me to the old, like, Mordheim experience gain chart where it was like, you played 1 experience, you won a bonus experience, your leader was there and he lived 1 experience, right, for him. And it's just like, da-da-da-da-da-da. It's very similar, right? You fought the game based on the point size of the game. X amount of glory. You won a major victory based on the size of the game, Y amount of glory. You won a minor victory, so on. Your warlord took part in the battle and was not slain, little bit of bonus glory as well, right?
Exactly.
And this is very much tilted towards playing.
Correct.
Right? Just playing the game. This is actually an interesting deviation. Like in Mordheim, one of the things that would happen was if you're, and I understand the scale is very different, but nonetheless, the lesson here is the same in game design. In Mordheim, the incentive was like if you played and kind of got your teeth kicked in, you did still get a little consolation prize, right?
Yeah.
Right.
But the incentive was really to win.
Yeah.
And to live, right?
Yeah, it's still a war game at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
You are trying to win a war game.
Whereas here, you can get a lot of glory, like, without necessarily winning. Right?
Yep.
So it's let's just sketch out an imaginary scenario here, right? Let's say you're both playing a Vanguard game, so it's rather small, 500-600 points, somewhere in that range, right? You both play the game. You both use your warlord, right?
Yep.
But you lost. Your warlord lived, okay,
Yep.
and theirs died.
Yep.
Perfectly reasonable scenario right there that would occur. Okay.
Yep.
So they won a major, and major and minor is a little bit different. We'll talk about that as we get in a scenario. But let's just say they won a major, you lost straight up. Okay. So they're going to get 8, you're going to get 6.
Yep.
In that scenario I just sketched out, right? It's not like they just suddenly raced ahead of you 1,000,000 points.
No.
Right.
Right.
So.
Well, yeah.
Yeah.
And even if they did, right, like those points are going to be useless because they're going to run into some hard limits based on the size of the stronghold. They're going to run into some hard limits based on how many bonus enhancements that they can use, right? So, like, that's the nice thing is like, not only do you gain proportionally a decent amount of points, even if you lose, you also have a small ceiling with which to deal with that and move forward, right?
Yep.
So.
Yep. Okay. So the next thing is injuries and casualties.
That's right.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Oh boy. Okay. So injuries are for heroes or units with a wounds characteristic of 8 or more noted as being single, right? So what's a good example?
Charybdis.
Yeah, sure. A slaughter brute, right? Yeah, exactly. A gorgon, whatever. These kinds of things. Okay. A casualty roll is everything else. So your units, basically, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think this is important, right? Because in match play right now, we're playing in Gur. And having monsters gains you a ton of extra points if you use them correctly.
Yep.
In Path to Glory, we're not playing in Gur.
Right.
And having a monster that can perma-die from one roll of the dice is really brutal. Right? Like,
super risky. Yeah.
This is super risky. So, like, just be noted that, like, it is not match play where monsters are all the rage. Like, you are taking a risk with that, 300-point Ragnarok, or, you could theoretically put Arcane on the list, and he could perma-die on one dice roll, right?
Well, Arcane couldn't because he's unique.
Oh, that's right. Sorry, yeah.
One could only hope.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which leads us to the next point. So let's talk about permadying. Okay. So, unique units don't make injury rolls. So it's just assumed that they're so legendary and so special that they just don't. This isn't their time to die, basically.
Yeah.
Right. Which is fine. Go Karnak continues to be the goodest of boys. Perfectly cheap, easy to fit into even a low cost roster.
Yeah.
Go get him, dog boy.
Cannot be your warlord though, sadly.
Nope.
Because they have to be both a hero and a leader. Boo.
Correct.
I mean, poor Gotrek.
Sure.
Poor Gotrek.
Like the Doom Seeker, all the hero non-leaders, yeah.
Who literally can't be killed.
Yes, can't be killed, but he can't be in charge either. He's not a man for that kind of responsibility. All right, the injury rolls. So you were mentioning death. Okay.
Yep.
So how does an injury roll work? Well, it's 2d6.
Yep.
Right? Now, in each
Sounds
aftermath sequence, you can
Yep.
reroll one injury roll by spending one glory point. You must
Correct.
choose whether to reroll the injury roll before rolling for the next unit. Okay?
Yeah.
All right. So,
yeah.
go ahead.
So 1 in 6 chance
Yes.
of permadeath
Well,
on every hero.
less than that, but yes. It's because if you roll
Yeah.
a 2 or 3 on
Yeah.
2d6, which is
Yeah.
less than 1 in 6, but I take your meaning.
Yeah.
It's if you roll a 2 or a 3, they're killed. And
Yep.
uh,
Remove
if,
from your order of battle.
correct. And if they're the warlord, then it triggers something else special because
Yep.
you
Correct.
have to trigger your death of your warlord.
Yeah. So it recommends to roll for your warlord first, so you can use that reroll if possible.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Need be. Yeah.
But from there forward, right? Critical injury. If this unit is included in your army, it begins the battle, the next battle, with D3 wounds allocated to it that cannot be negated or healed.
Right.
If you've got a 5-wound character like that, all of a sudden you can have a 2-wound character,
Yep.
right? Like, which is going to result in another roll on the chart. Like, if you're doing lower wound heroes, like this could be immensely brutal. And 6 to 7 is 1 wound. 8 to 11, nothing, right? And then Forged in Battle for 12, this unit gains 2d6 renown points.
Yep.
Which is amazing.
Right.
Because nothing gives you 2d6 renown points. So if you really feel like a risk taker, you could make sure that character gets killed in every game just to fish for the 12.
Big money.
Roll for them big boxcars, baby. Gotta get them boxies.
Exactly.
Yes, and we'll talk about renown and how that applies when we get to the sort of leveling up. Okay, so and then casualties are much simpler. That's for your units. Effectively, This is pretty simple. To make a casualty roll for a unit, roll the number of dice equal to the number of models in that unit that were slain during the battle, not including models that were slain and then returned, unless they were slain again. So if you do have a way to bring units back and you use, models back and you use those, for example, let's say you have like a life swarm or something running.
I would say life swarm eminently relevant.
Right.
Or rally.
Yep. Or you rally people back, or right, whatever. You've got the new Knight Vexilor in Stormcast that can just be like, pachow, 3d3 wounds of people back. Right. Okay. Great.
They have definitely faced that. Yeah.
Yep. Then no, you don't roll for those people. Like they came back, they got healed during the fight, they're okay as long as they didn't die again.
Yep.
For each roll of 1, increase the unit's casualty score by 1. After making a casualty roll, you can choose to spend 1 glory point to reroll 1 of the dice in that casualty roll.
1.
No, 1. Yes, no more than 1 dice can be rerolled in each casualty roll. And then what happens is you take that score. When you set up the unit, you then subtract out models
That many.
Correct.
equal to the
So
casualty
technically,
score.
you set up the unit first, and then you remove it before the first turn.
Right. Take a simple unit of 5 elite dudes. They have a casualty score of 2. You're going to set up all 5, but then 2 get removed. Assuming you haven't healed them and other stuff, then blah, blah, blah. Right.
You don't have to take Battle Shock for that bravery for them, thankfully. So, like, they're good, right? Like Battle Shock. So.
Yep. That unit just is at 3 now for that fight. Okay. All right. So then we gain some renown. So this is what you were talking about. So if you took part in the battle and were not destroyed, you gain 1 renown.
Yep. Every unit.
Every unit gains 1 renown for participating and surviving in the battle. Okay?
Correct.
That's it. So Autumn Lotus has a good question here, and this is good. This is as good a time as any to talk about this. What happens when you add to your army, like adding Zangor or Chaos Spawn, like summons is what he's effectively asking, right? Summons and that kind of stuff.
Yep.
You want to talk about that, Paul?
So it's not included in your order of battle, and it doesn't count towards the casualty rolls. If it's not on your starting army, then it's not affected by the casualties. It's not affected by anything else.
Right.
But it also means that in scenarios where your starting army is important, it doesn't count for that either.
Right. Yep. So they're there. They can participate. Like you summon them in. You're playing Slash or something. You summon a unit. into the battle, they participate, they work in that battle. They don't get added to your order of battle. They don't get added to your roster, right, in any permanent way. But you also then aren't making casualty rolls for them or whatever. There are some in there, they go away. But the advantage to them is, hey, it's extra free troops. The disadvantage is the scenarios often have limitations around starting units. Right?
Yeah.
So
So the interesting thing about surviving the battle, right? Each unit that took part in the battle and was not destroyed gains 1 renown point.
Yep.
So Path to Glory has a cool rule which allows you to retreat from the battle. If more than half of the units from your starting army have been destroyed, at the beginning of your hero phase, you can be like, peace out, I'm done.
Right.
Right? And if you peace out, those units are not destroyed.
Right.
So you can gain renown for units by running off the table. Your opponent is then allowed to continue to finish the game, so they can go and get all the objectives they want to, or, you know, like, get all of their units into your deployment zone to get the extra renown as well. But if you're just like, I do not want this hero to die, and I've already lost half my units, you can just peace out.
Right. Yep.
Which is definitely not a match play rule, and something I think is super fun, and narratively, I think adds a whole new level of tactics to what's going on, right? Like, you know, my character, Petra the Thornborn, I could see him using this all the time because he's a ranger, and if the battle isn't going his way, he's just gonna be like, well, I'm out.
Sure.
Right? Like, I'm just gonna like fade into the woods or do whatever, and like, I'm done, because this is not what my narrative is about. This is not my goal that I'm trying to achieve.
Yep. Sort of a hit, stick, and move thing.
Exactly.
The scenarios will often give you, or the battle plans, I should say, will often give you ways to earn bonus renown. If you're not using one of those, that's okay. There is still a way to earn bonus renown, and they have like sort of a rule that's added in here that's just basically a 4-up roll to gain some bonus renown under certain conditions if you're using other non-Path to Glory scenarios. And then you get to pick one unit that took part in the battle to be your favored warriors. That unit gains D6 renown.
So
go ahead.
So the point I would make is that now we've talked about glory and we've talked about renown, and again, that was super confusing for me when I started. Glory is things that affect the game before the game starts.
Right.
Renown is things that affect the game when it's being played. That's what you spend your renown on.
Yes.
That's a good distinction. Yeah.
So artifacts, spells, all that kind of stuff, you buy that when you write the army list. But renown is specifically for things that allow you to get command traits, allow you to get veteran abilities that affect the game itself by giving them to specific units or heroes.
Yep. So that then leads to your and unique units don't gain renown either. They can't die permanently, but they can't gain renown.
Archaon doesn't get any better.
Right.
He's as good as he's ever going to get.
Right. Which is, again, makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then you have your ranking system. So this is there for both heroes and normal troops. But effectively, that's a function of your renown score, right? Your renown points. How many you have. So 0 to 4, you're untested. You have 0 veteran abilities. 5 to 14. That's the score. I just I'm gonna read these numbers because I just gave you how you earn these points, and I want you to now mentally hold that in your head. Yeah. Right? If I said you get 1 for the battle, maybe there's a few bonus in the scenario.
Another 1.
And then another 1. And then you have this one unit that's going to get to roll a d6, right?
Yeah.
Okay, now against that, with my unit, this is for non-heroes, by the way. That's the table I'm reading right now. Non-heroes, you need to get to 5 to hit your veteran warrior level. So, got to play a couple. That's some games, right?
Yep.
And then 5 to 14.
Yep.
14 to 20, 15 to 29 to be elite, and then 30 plus to be legendary. So it's a lot of games. It's a lot of games.
But the trade-off is that you get a unit that just can like really go to town and become super flexible, because the veteran abilities basically just give you a rule that breaks the game for one turn.
Right.
And then the trade-off is if you're getting a bunch of these units, you can only ever use one veteran ability on a unit in your army per turn.
Yep.
Right? So, playing 5 games, you get 5 veteran abilities. Right? And it only is something that you get to use in Path to Glory. You can't use this in match play or whatever, right? So it allows you to add some character and add some flexibility to those units, which I think is super cool.
Yep.
And very flavorful.
Yeah, and to do this math, because each unit, non-hero unit, can have up to 3 veteran abilities.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Right. And the as you just said, these are limited to 1 per turn, right? Being used across your army. So that means if you think about that mathematically, right, over a course of a game, there are 10 opportunities to use these, right?
Yep.
So once you have a lot of units that have a lot of veteran abilities, you still can't just like press the Whopper button and go nuts with them, right? Every round.
Well, and that also means that you can use them in your opponent's phase.
Sure. Oh, 100%. And some of these you're very much going to want to. Some not so much, right? Like, and these are kind of exactly what you think. So, for example, Fleet of Foot. This unit can use this veteran ability once per battle at the start of your charge phase. If it does so, this unit can attempt to charge in that phase, even if it ran, right? So, once a game, that unit can run and charge.
Yeah.
Right? Or +1 to wound rolls, or whatever, in melee or shooting or something like that, right? It's the kind of stuff you would expect.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then heroes earn different ranks. And heroes gain a command trait instead of veteran abilities. So for heroes, it's 0 to 14 is just a rising hero. And then 15 plus is a mighty hero. So where the hero gains a command trait is at that 15 plus. And that's why you're saying now let's think back to that casualty table and you roll them big boxies and get that 2d6. Woo! Yep. That's a big old bonus on this chart, right?
Yeah.
It's a huge run up of the score.
Yeah.
So yes. And then the tier of battle, as we mentioned earlier, is what determines how many heroes, in addition to your general, can use command traits during that battle.
Mm-hmm.
So,
well, and you can have more than just like the number that can be used. So you can definitely increase your options for which command abilities to use.
Yep.
But they are limited, for sure.
And the important part here is the way that this is working is your warlord starts with 15 renown, so they've already earned the rank of mighty hero, right? They have their command trait.
Mm-hmm. Well, and the other thing is that the tier is the command traits for lower is 1, middle is 3, higher is 5. The tier of battle determines how many friendly heroes can use their command trait in the battle. So you can only have 1 hero that can use a command trait until you upgrade your stronghold. Period.
Yep.
So if 1 hero uses their command trait, that's it. Nobody else gets to use their command trait that game.
Right.
Then if you upgrade, then you can use 3 heroes, right? And then if you upgrade again, then you can use 5. So again, if you're building a match play army, this is not going to play like a match play army, right? You're not going to be able to use your sorceress 1 turn and then your fleet master another turn, and nope. If you're playing in the first tier, you have 1 hero and you decide which of those 1 heroes is going to use their command ability that battle, and that's it.
Yep. And then your final steps in the aftermath are you check if you completed your quests. If not, you can you make progress, or you can choose to give up on them and start a new one. By the way, that is also an option. You can manage your stronghold. So this is you can upgrade your stronghold to imposing or mighty depending on where you are. These are very expensive, so it's like 30 glory to upgrade to an imposing stronghold and 60 to upgrade to a mighty. These are not cheap things.
No.
It makes a big difference. You move up to much more territory, to much bigger barracks as far as the number of units you can hold, stuff like that. You can also just add barracks, right? You can choose to just add barracks to your existing stronghold. So if you just want to get the troop upgrade, you can, instead of buying the whole shooting match, you can just add barracks to it as well.
Correct.
Yeah. Then you manage your territories, and there's a couple interesting things here. So do you want to talk about exploration and the territories?
So at the end of every game, whether or not you won or you lost, you can make an exploration roll, right?
Yes.
You may not have enough points to buy it, but you still can make it if you want to. And if you took that one quest that allows you to do a double, then you can roll twice here for the same price. So there is a rule for territories where you can never have more than 3 territories of the same type. So if you did start off with Legion and you're like, I want to have 4 monsters. All right, well, that's all the monster territories you can get in the whole game.
Right.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And the other thing that you can do is you can upgrade those territories.
Yes.
So this is a cool thing. Again, story-wise, what you're doing is you're going around and conquering your empire, but then you're also fortifying your empire as well. So each territory is 10 glory, and then each territory also has an upgrade ability. They don't all have them, but they all have an upgrade ability that is a specific points cost. So they're not all the same, and they all do kind of different things, right?
Yep.
So if you roll an 11 to 16, you get Barren Waste, and the territory cannot be controlled, you get nothing, right? That's kind of your, like, no whammies, crap.
Sure.
Right?
This is anybody familiar? This is like rolling if you, again, I hate to make that, I keep making Mordheim comparisons, but this is what happened when you rolled down in the garbage area of the Mordheim table as well,
Yes.
right? Where it was just like, oh,
it's a pit.
no.
You're like, no.
Right.
Why couldn't I find something in the pit? Yeah. So a lot of these are to increase those limits, right? So
Right.
monsters, war machines, wizards, priests.
Yep.
But then you can also do reinforced units. You can do allied units, and then the Wellspring is kind of cool because you are allowed to recover some of those units that took casualties.
Right.
And you're allowed to recover at a 2+ instead of a 4+. So that's huge. And then if you upgrade it, you can pick 2 units instead of 1. So, like, that's a great ability.
Yeah, so let's give a very simple example, right? So Wildlands is one of the territories. This is if you roll a 23 or 24. Increase your monster's limit by 1. Remember, if you roll this, you still have to pay 10 glory to acquire it, right?
Correct.
Yep.
Now, you can also choose to upgrade your Wildlands, which is funny to me. And I guess it's like you're getting out there and you're really doing some topiary work, I suppose. It's just like a safari area now.
Putting some nice cushions in the caves,
Yeah.
like getting some interior design going.
Yeah, it's a really nicely upgraded wildland. But at any rate, if you spend an additional 10 glory in that area, because this one says upgrade 10 glory, that's how much it costs. The upgrade cost varies. But in this case, it's 10. You increase the limit of monsters you can have in your army by 3 instead of by 1. So, like, it's you can make a big swing toward the type of army you want. Again, same thing. Like, if you have an all-wizard force, you're trying to play like a Hollowheart thing or whatever. Then you get the Arcane Waypoint, you upgrade it, boom, you now have 3 bonus wizards, right? And so on and so forth.
Yep.
And then there are the other special ones, like the Realmstone Reserve. You receive D3 additional glory points in step 1 of the Aftermath sequence. And then if you upgrade it for 15, you receive an additional D6 glory, right? So you literally have a glory mine.
Glory.
I was gonna say it. Yeah, I wasn't gonna say it, Tom.
Look, it's the television show. We've all seen the television show. Yes. Okay. So, and then, so I like these territories. I'm gonna be honest with you here, Paul. I want like a giant blown out table for this. If you remember that, because the way Mordheim worked, if you remember, was you would roll all your exploration dice, and then your
D66.
doubles, triples, quadruples would then put you onto a specific D66 table, right?
Yep.
I would love to see other crazy territories. There's so much they could do here, right?
Yeah.
Where
Do
it would
they-
be like where you could just have other interesting types of territories you're discovering that allow for other wacky things to happen, right?
Yep.
There's so
Do
much
they
more
have-
they could do here.
Is there? Do they have I forget looking through it. Like a rules for multiplayer variant of this.
There you can use the open play scenarios for it, and you can. It doesn't say that you're limited to playing one-on-one in order to gain glory or renown or anything like that. So you could easily do that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say the specific path to glory scenarios are all two-player scenarios. But remember, you do have rules to use any scenario you want.
Yep.
In this thing, so you could juice in any of the old multiplayer scenarios and use these rules.
Yeah, like the ability for something to be developed to expand this rule set out into something truly remarkable is enticing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. All right, I gotta take 5 seconds. I'll be right back.
You go right ahead. Well, he goes, I'm going to take you through and then you have your final step is to manage your order of battle. So during this step of the aftermath, you can spend glory points to either add new units to your order of battle, recuperate your units that have suffered casualties, or reinforce any of your units, right? So this is, people had questions about like, what if I want to add or reinforce a unit, right? This is where it is. It's in here. And so the thing that's probably the most key to talk about is recuperating. So you can spend glory points to recuperate a unit with a casualty score of 1 or more. The number of glory points you must spend in order to recuperate the unit is determined by the points value of the unit, as shown on the table below. And so then there's a little table, and it shows you how much it has. To recuperate the unit, you must spend the required number of glory points and roll a number of dice equal to the unit's casualty score. This is referred to as the recuperating roll. For each 4+, reduce the unit's casualty score by 1. If the unit did not take part in your last Path to Glory battle, reduce the unit's casualty score by 1 for each 2+ instead. Each unit can only be recuperated once in the aftermath sequence, and that's where the wellspring comes in, because it makes the unit be treated all the time as though they didn't take place in the battle or take part in the battle, right? So it puts them to that 2 up all the time. Yeah, and then so you've got a little table that like how much did the unit cost, and then to add, recuperate, or reinforce, there's a certain amount of glory you spend. Pretty straightforward, right?
Nice.
Yeah, it's very straightforward. The interesting part is it is more expensive slightly to reinforce than it is to add, right? So you are incentivized to minorly to get a new unit instead of reinforce your unit.
Well, because the old units are going to become strong.
Yeah.
Like they're going to get upgraded.
Well, and you can have a veteran ability on that unit and then upgrade it, right?
Yep.
But by the same token, then you double the points cost, which means that your recuperate is that much more expensive.
Right.
Yep.
So
that's what I was going to say. That once you reinforce it, that's going to have consequences because it's now a more expensive unit. Right? Yes.
Yep.
Well, but even if you're just going to recuperate a unit versus adding it, right?
Yep.
If it's 150 points, it's 4 points to add a unit or 2 points to recuperate it. So if you recuperate it once, that's half the price of just buying a new unit. If you recuperate it twice, you could have already bought a new unit. So you better be pretty tied to that unit if you're going to recuperate it, right? And I played 2 Cities of Sigmar armies. And like those 10-man units, that's a lot of recuperating to pay to keep a 10-man unit. So then you ask yourself, narratively, are these guys important to me? Or am I holding on to it because it's what I put in my list and I'm just used to that, right? Or should I just let them die?
Right. So Autumn Lotus asked a question that we didn't directly answer yet, and I feel bad we didn't, but it is really important to mention. We've talked a lot about limits. And Autumn said, does Battle Line let you ignore normal limits like a wizard for Carrick acolytes? And the answer, as near as I can tell, is no, it doesn't. Go ahead.
Because
Paul.
Battle Line isn't a thing.
Right.
So unit being battle line wouldn't help you to ignore something because battle line doesn't matter in Path to Glory.
Right.
Right.
The trick is all of your not those special category units aren't capped, right? So free guild guard. Yep. Just take the good old fashioned free guild guard.
As many as you want.
Is basic dudes. 10 basic dudes. Right?
Yep.
You can have as many 10 basic dudes as you want. But like because pink horrors or whatever are wizards and have the wizard keyword or whatever, insert unit here that is somehow special with that keyword, they're going to fall under the same limit as anything else. Yeah. So if you want to have a bunch of pinks and Carracks and stuff like that, then the key would be make sure that your starting territory that you choose allows you to have an extra wizard or something like that, right? And then hope that you or start at a higher, as we mentioned, you can start at, as Paul talked about earlier, you could start at a higher points value. I'm going to get the words wrong, but you can pick the higher points value, right?
Right.
And not necessarily, Autumn, because that's the key. You can start at the higher points value so that you have more territories to choose, right?
Right.
So you can expand out your list in the way that Paul mentioned. He was talking about it with monsters, right? But you could do it with wizards instead, the same story. And then you play down, right? So you still have, like, you've been expanded for your total roster, but for that particular battle, you're only using like 600 points. Great. Okay, cool beans. You're good to go. Right.
Well, but even there, right? Like, you're looking at it as I'm starting with a match play army, trying to figure out how to fit that in Path to Glory, right? You don't need any units. You can just have 3 heroes, right? As long as none of those heroes are more than 50% of the total cost of the whole order of battle,
right?
You don't need units, right?
Yeah.
If you do want units, they don't need to be battle line. You can use screamers, right? Like, screamers are not magic users. They're not battle line, but it doesn't matter because you can just use screamers and enlightened and whatever you want to, and that's totally fine because you're building your narrative. And if your narrative is like, I want a ton of wizards, well, then you're going to have to start with that 2,000 point army, and then you're going to have to buy in those wizards later, right? Because wizards are really powerful, especially in low points games. So if you're going to want that many wizards, you're going to have to pay for it, right? Your max wizards that you're going to be able to have in a starting army, even if it's 2,000 points, is 4.
Right.
So you're not going to be able to build out that list from day one. You're going to have to buy in those wizards as you upgrade those territories. Right. But if you upgrade 3 territories, right, at that point you have 10 wizards.
But we're also talking about keyworded wizards. So some units like count as a wizard, but they're not actually a wizard if they don't have the keyword.
Correct. Yeah, and so to specifically, and I went and double checked Autumn because I had to go look this up as well. I didn't remember if Carracks had it because I know Pinks, well, used to. They don't anymore, I guess. I don't know.
No,
they don't have wizard. I'm trying to think of a unit that has the wizard keyword actually. I don't know. Anyways, Carracks don't have it. That's the point. Yep. And Pink's new scroll doesn't have wizard on it either. So I guess you're fine. Yeah. So never mind. Ignore my and like Lumineth become a wizard, but they don't have the wizard keyword on their guys. So yeah, you're okay. You're good. Zinch away, my friend. You're completely good to go.
Maybe Sisters of the Thorn. I'd have to check.
Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. They might. All right. Oh yeah, maybe Doomfires. There you go. I bet they still do. That's a good call, Tom. Let's see. Let's look, Tom. Doomfire. Here we go. There they are. Doomfire Warlocks. Wizard. There it is. There's the example. So the Doomfire Warlocks will be a wizard choice in your army. Take that, Doomfire Warlocks.
Sorry, you just have to take more snakes.
Just more snakes. So okay, let's talk a little bit about the actual battle pack then and the play. So, they have the standard thing here of like what's the point size you're playing, what's our recommended table size, number of terrain, all that kind of stuff. The you, as mentioned previously, you can use both War Scroll and Core Battalions in this, and then also here the note on faction terrain.
Yep.
Each battle plan in this battle pack will state if faction terrain can be set up and which players can do so. Love this. Love this. Because it actually makes faction terrain feel more like part of the thing, as opposed to just, why is there a pizza oven everywhere?
Suck it, enough. No boats.
So that's great. And there are, you do use the Mysterious Terrain table, which is, again, Deadly Inspiring, Bravery, or whatever. Deadly Inspiring, Sinister, Mystical, Arcane, and Damned. Ha! Got him. Okay. There we go. And as you mentioned, you have the withdrawal rule. There's also a little Warrior Renown thing, which I won't explain. But there are 6... It's because it's not super relevant. There are 6 battle plans in this base book. And I don't remember, Paul, are there any new battle plans for Path to Glory in the Path to Glory section of the Army books? That I don't remember.
There are.
Okay.
There definitely are.
Cool.
The War Clans book, I think, has 2. Because they have a battle plan that allows you to destroy your opponent's territory to ransack it, and then they also have another one. It's a monster hunt, if I remember correctly. So
nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
So they also have quests for those as well. So they do flesh it out. One of the cool things is that that's something that War Clans can do, is they get territories just so they can beat the crap out of them.
Which completely makes sense.
Exactly.
Completely makes sense.
Yeah.
Matthew W says, by the way, this makes me excited to play AoS again. Yeah, man, I'm not even joking. Like, I do not know why I wasn't playing this. I should have read these rules. I mean, I know why. Look, I honestly know why, Paul. Like, just have a quick talk about this, and we'll talk about the kind of battle plan. Because I picked Sudden Assault because I think it's actually kind of a
higher edition bias.
Yeah, because I didn't like the old version.
Yep.
That was what it was. Like, I didn't like the previous version that was in the old books, right? I didn't hate it. I just didn't like it. I read it, and I was like, didn't really grab me. This isn't for me.
Yeah.
Right?
Yep.
And so I just foolishly assumed that this is just going to be basically like that. And this isn't going to be for me either, right?
Yep.
This was a wrong assumption. Just straight up wrong. Because I read this, and I'm seriously like, I'm going to talk to my group, and I'm like, next time we all get together and say, like, why don't we just get one of these going on? Because we all tend to play the same armies.
Yeah,
right. You guys normally aren't playing 2K anyways.
Right. Yeah, exactly. We don't normally play 2K because we do lots of like multiplayer wacky games and stuff like that. And, this is exactly the kind of stuff I love. We're all big Mordheim fans.
Yeah.
And we've done multiple campaigns, like map campaigns over the years in the past. We did, in Old Fantasy days, we did 2 different full map campaigns. Okay. And once I read through this, I was like, no, this would actually be perfect for my group. This totally brought me around.
Yeah.
As to like, why am I not doing this?
Just imagine how fun it would be in a 4-player game where you're pinning one of your opponent's units and the other opponent is relying on you to pin them, and then you just withdraw.
Sure. Just leave. Bye.
Peace out.
Like, peace out. I'm done.
Yeah. So I mean, legit, folks. I wasn't interested in this because I thought, oh, this is like, it's whatever, right?
Yeah.
And then I reread it and I was like, oh, actually, this is, this sounds really good. Like, this is a bunch of stuff I think is cool. Fading said, what size games do you typically play? 1K or 1500 is often. I mean, like, I'd say half of my games I end up being 1-on-1. And so those are just played at standard 2K match play games. And then the other half of my games end up being some form of multiplayer wackiness where we either have 1,000 or 1,500 points. So, there you go. Okay, so let's just end here talking about Sudden Assault, just so people can kind of see what one of these scenarios looks like, right?
Yep.
you're choosing invade. In this one, you're choosing invader, which is the invader and which is the custodian. And as you can see there, that then generates territory. Pretty straightforward.
Yep.
The players roll off. The winner sets up the battlefield terrain features, and then the other player chooses which long edge of the battlefield is the northern edge, which is obviously relevant for the map and where each player will then go. After terrain features have been set up, starting with the player that won the roll off, each player picks one terrain feature and rolls on the mysterious terrain table to determine the scenery rule and apply that. The custodian can set up a faction terrain feature because you're invading their home. That's the idea of the thing. So it actually makes sense why the terrain feature is there.
So weird. I can't imagine.
Weird. Why is that pizza oven there? It's there because you're invading the Fire Slayer's territory. That's why, right? So the invader sets up their deployment. The invader sets up their army first, wholly within their territory and more than 9 inches away from the center of the battlefield. Then the custodian sets up their army in their territory, more than 9 inches away. In the first turn, the invader chooses which player takes the first turn in the first battle round. So this is this is why some of the core battalions don't necessarily work the same, like being unified, or it's not, you don't choose first in the same way just on drops. Yep. The battle lasts 5 rounds. The battlefield victory points. The battlefield is divided into quarters, as shown below on the map. At the end of each battle round, each player scores 1 victory point for each quarter of the battlefield that has more friendly models wholly within it than enemy models. And then when the battle ends, the player with the most victory points wins a major victory. If it's tied, the custodian wins a minor victory. I love that kind of stuff, right? Like, if you're tied, the custodian wins the minor because they've held you off from invading their territory.
Right.
Yep.
Right? Like, it's perfect. You completely understand the narrative of what has occurred here. And then bonus renown at the end of each battle. Each friendly unit that is wholly within a quarter of the battlefield that has no enemy units wholly within it gains 1 renown point.
Yep. So what I love about this scenario is at the end of each battle round, each player scores 1 victory point for each quarter of the battlefield that has more friendly models wholly within it.
Yes.
Not friendly units.
Right.
So if you're in the center of the battlefield and you have a unit of 10, you can be in all of the units. Like, this actually happened in one of my Path to Glory games. Is I was playing against ogres, and he had 4 ogres. So he had 1 ogre in each center of one in every quarter, right?
Right.
And then he had a hero running around, and I'm trying to run around with my squigs to take him out, right? But then at the end of the game, each friendly unit that is wholly within a quarter of the battlefield that has no enemy units, right? So, and there's no objectives. So who cares if suns count for 20 or 30 points for capturing objectives? It doesn't matter,
right? Because
there are no objectives, right? So even if you're playing for match play, like, even if you're still in that mindset, it doesn't matter for this scenario, right? And it doesn't matter how many units you kill. If I still have units, that's fine. I can do stuff, right? And all of the battle plans are like that to a certain extent, where it's not intended to be, I'm going to be able to figure out what's going on and how everything is going to manipulate. Like, it's a different way of playing.
Right.
Not only is it a different way of playing the army, is it a different way of building the army, is it a different way of figuring out your narrative, it's also a completely different way of playing.
Yep. And there's all these scenarios are different. There's a lot of variance into how they're playing. So, like, I just wanted to throw one up here to give people a little flavor. But check them out. They're all different. They provide for a nice varied experience. So yeah, that's Path to Glory. Pretty great stuff. Yeah, I really like what they did with this in this new edition.
Yeah, it's so good.
Like, this is a much different system. One I think is pretty exciting. Paul, is there anything else about Path to Glory that we missed that you wanted to cover? I'm gonna bring up while you're thinking about that. I'm gonna go ahead and pop your army up on the table here, your roster, just so people can take a look. That's probably way too small. I'll see if I can make it bigger. Sorry, everyone.
I don't think I've ever read a set of rules Even like I'm including most of the RPGs that I've played that really are tailored to help you to tell your story better than this, right? It not only is it a different way of playing the game, but it's a different way of approaching the game. And
Yeah.
everything about it is designed to help you to get those story notes and those little plot points to force your narrative forward. And that's just super cool. Like from the beginning of when you're doing the order of the battle, the who, what, where, when, and why, right? Moving forward to discussing with your opponent how the game played out and what the result of this game is and who ended up getting hurt and why they ended up like, if somebody dies, why did they die? Let's talk it out. Why did this character actually die? What happened that they ended up being slain on the battlefield? And why was that a permadeath, right? It's just such an inviting system playing the game that we love, using the models that we love to make our stories. And like even if you never actually want to play a full Path to Glory campaign, just playing this to get an idea of that cool model that you painted. I want a story behind him. Play 3 or 4 games of Path to Glory, and you're going to come up with a story.
Right.
And then you've got some narrative for your tournament army, and it's fine. You can talk to your opponent about, well, it's this guy, and he did this thing, and he's from this realm, and this is the cool thing that he did, right? That's
Right.
it. I mean, when we get together and we talk to other people who play Age of Sigmar, we always talk about that one time that this cool thing happened,
Yep.
and it was completely against the odds. And this system gives you a way to make that a story for your character, not just for look at the dice roll that I had.
Yep.
And that's pretty incredible to me.
Agreed. All right. Well, Paul, thank you so much for teaching us Path to Glory, for coming on and sharing with us. I hope we inspired some people to give this a try.
Yep.
Super cool stuff. What'd you say, Tom?
It inspired me.
Absolutely. That's what
Well,
I'm saying.
I have to say, you inspired me to get super involved and to start our podcast to begin with, because you were one of the people that I was like, well, you're being negative, and I feel like this is a cool thing, or uninformed. And like when I talked to you about doing Path to the Glory, I was just like, I think this is cool.
Yes.
And then I heard you talk about like, oh, I really don't like this, and it's not my favorite system. And I'm like, I really want to go and talk about this, and I already talked to you about it. And then I was talking to somebody else about like, everybody's just negative or like just uninformed about how cool this is. And then Will and I were just like, we need to start a podcast so we can tell people how cool this system is.
Yeah.
So you are one of the reasons why we have the podcast to begin with.
I'm glad that I'm inspiring change. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Tom.
Yeah, no, I mean, what I would say is that like I had the same bias that Vince did, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Of the prior system bias, and the reality.
And I didn't enjoy the prior system either, because it was so lockstep into what was going on, and you would roll into the things, and because the game is so based on combos, you wouldn't have combos with those units, or they'd be
right.
One list would be like, all right, I get a bunch of enlightened. Well, that's cool. Those guys are going to do great. And all right, I've got 3 minotaurs. Great.
Yeah.
Right? So yeah, it really is revamped.
Yeah. And I really like this. I like the control. I like the use of the territories. I like the rewards. I really like the injury tables and stuff like that. Simple system with a lot of variance here. I stand behind my belief that there is no way this section should be in the middle of my match play rules. So I stand behind that. But move it in the book to before. Why is it not before? Or after. Either way, put it one side or the other. I don't care. It can be anywhere. But anyways, no, this really impressed me. They did a great job with this on the rewrite. It really turned into something that I'm, genuinely excited for. So there you go, Paul. Thank you so much. All of you out there watching, hey, if you haven't already, hit like, help other people find the show, help us spread the gospel of Path to Glory so that a lot of people find it and learn that, hey, the system did change. It's very different now, and they should give it a second look. So there you go. All right, Paul, thank you much, buddy. Good to see you. Good to talk to you. Miss you, brother. Haven't got to see you in
Yes.
person in a while. But
Maybe at Adepticon, hopefully.
I expect you to be there. You better be.
Yes.
There you go. All right. For all of you out there watching, thank you so much for watching. Like I said, don't forget to hit like, subscribe if you haven't already. We're almost to my milestone that we're trying to hit. We're so close, people. We're so close. So close to that milestone. So, at any rate, thank you so much. As always, we'll see you next Wednesday.